Welcome back to Blueprints. This is episode 3 in my 100% completion and lore series. Um, Last time, this is day 6. On day 5 was one of those crazy days where just a whole bunch of stuff gets done. So we got like the basement puzzle all worked through. The problem is, I just for fun on the side, I have another file going of blueprints on my Steam account, and I might have a hard problem remembering exactly where the status of some things are in this versus where I am in the other one. So forgive me if I make a couple of oversights. Um, but real fast rundown of where we are on our completion here. Obviously, we haven't done any Sanctum puzzles. I've only done a couple of contraptions, namely Power Hammer, because that's how we get a bunch of stuff done. And Burning Glass got some things done there as well. So I believe I've claimed, for instance, the tunnel, but I have not drafted it, obviously. We have the throne room, we have lost and found, so all we're missing now would be the brain is failing. Found floor plans, what are the last two I'm missing? Closed exhibit, because I haven't found the study yet, and the treasure trove, because we haven't had the boiler room available to go up underground yet. Have not gotten to 46, obviously, but we got a lot of the rooms here complete. Out of, we're probably we're a little over halfway for a complete directory. Obviously, quite a few that I don't have yet, like most of the studio editions. I've only gotten it once, I think, and we got the kennel. We have the other trophies. I haven't done any of these yet, and the ones that are grayed out here will be added in after I have gotten to 46 and kick things off that way. Constellations, we're doing okay. Books, we've read some of them. We read the blueprint, the Red Prince draft, and the actual Red Prince. Have not. I forget if we've even seen the library yet. We may have seen it, and I think I may have requested a book finally, but that's about it. We have only gotten it maybe the once. We've been there once. So I need some more library days apparently. Obviously I'll have to not also seen the bookshop, so nothing. That'll have to work itself out. Doing okay on the other books. We've gone through a drafting strategy, both Gardener's log books. I haven't done the gift shop, obviously. We are solid on permanent upgrades. We got all the ones that we can have. Everything except blue tents is done so far. Stamps, I'm just going to wait until the Sanctum is complete and then just go take a magnifying glass down there rather than trying to hunt them all down individually. Get them all done in one go. I have a couple of these meals that I didn't read the description on, and I'm determined to do all the things. Hey, Sushi, welcome in. Happy to have you in. Just doing a quick recap here. And let's see. All the side fruits, once we get some shrines going one of these days, I'll do the Power of the Chef and get those done. Power Sledge. Okay, this is to remind me where I am as well, as much as anything else, so bear with me. We did the greenhouse, and then the underground. Okay, got it. That's good. And then I'm still missing the Schoolhouse flame, so we haven't done the Precipice Castle puzzle bash down yet. And I have not bashed the Secret Garden, so I got to keep that in mind. Only about halfway through on the upgrade discs. Actually, exactly halfway through. Wait, am I missing one there? Wait a second. 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, no, okay. One shy of halfway. I just miscounted. Okay. Archive. Okay, so I still need to have the laundry room key. Planetarium. I just need to, get the telescope going there. And I've done very few more Jai puzzles. So I keep that in mind. Alzara. I've only ever pulled the underground north lever. I've never pulled any of the other levels seriously. Okay then. Alright. So, I've made some notes after having edited the first 2 videos of this series, but the second of which went live this morning. So, if you want to go catch up on what happened in the first 2 episodes of this series, they are on YouTube Live. and have been edited down a bit for, you know, brevity and clarity as much as possible. But I did realize going through there's a few rooms that I didn't read the descriptions for, certain items that I didn't really pay attention to and glossed over. So I have some notes that I'm going to try and make up for when we come across them, and I will try to do better about not repeating that issue when we get to new stuff as we go. Okay. Let's go see what we get outside. And for outer rooms, I've only had, obviously 5 so far, if that. Yeah. So we need Schoolhouse, Shrine, and Root Cellar still. Turn Dread down a little bit. There we go. Alright, let's see what we got. Hey, look, Schoolhouse, Root Cellar, and Hovel. So 2 out of 3. 2 out of 3 that I'm missing. Let's go ahead and do Schoolhouse, so that we can start at the earliest possible convenience. Hello. Working on going for a chess power now. And with 4 gems, it's at least a solid start towards trying for a school day. We'll see what we can do. If we can get a good day going on that one, we will. But I mean, we still have relatively few upgrades and permanent things that would help us along for a nice, easy school day run. So we'll see what happens. But that lever's nice. Oh, crap. I can't believe... Okay. Here I am. It's like, I'll try to be better about doing this stuff. And then I immediately fail in the first room. Okay, so the Schoolhouse. Long before Reddington Elementary was opened, school convened in a single small building. As the student body grew over the years, the need for separate classrooms for each grade arose, and the Mountain Holly Schoolhouse was officially closed down. So the Schoolhouse was actually... Let me get my timeline open here. The Schoolhouse was opened in 1928, and coincidentally, obviously always used with big heavy quotation marks around it, Herbert was 8 years old, there's that number again, when the Schoolhouse was opened. And this makes it sound like this is the one and only public school in Reddington, and it may have been. I find that difficult to fathom. Reddington is one of the largest cities in the realm. We're into the modern era, so this is not like when the realm is young and the cities were much smaller. This is growth and industrial revolution, etc., like have happened in this world to some degree. Reddington is a big booming town. You can't fit the entire childhood, children class of an entire city in this schoolhouse. So Reddington Elementary is the one that Herbert helped design, and so this is saying before that was open, this is school convened here. I would still think that there's some form of public education system still in Reddington proper, and so my theory on this one at least has always been that RFA created this maybe for some of the more upper class students to attend, the royal class, or the noble class, if you will. And that this provided her an option, at least, to have the schooling here close at hand, perhaps a little bit away from the governing eyes of the Fen royalty. So she could then control what students came here and what was taught. And, this is a blueprint. There's not a shred of red in that room. Whereas when we get to the classrooms, which were designed in, 1966? Yeah, 1966. Those are red flags. It's modern, etc., etc. And so this, however, is still more under RFA's control. It's still in the time of the Fen government. So, but this is the sort of thing that I think she would have done to maintain a little control over what her children were educated in, and possibly what some of the other noble children were educated with. We know that Clara went to school here, for instance, and obviously Tomas and Simon and Herbert went to school here, and it's just sort of that whole era of children I think that it makes sense that way. There's no indication to that one way or the other. But again, I don't think you can fit the entire child populace for all grade levels of elementary school in the city of Reddington in that room. Even cycling them in and out, which it doesn't seem like that's what it was for, doesn't seem possible to me. So a smaller class of the more noble blooded or otherwise deserving children in Orve's eyes might have made sense here. Obviously, when you get this, that adds the 8 classrooms to the draft pool, which allows you to do school days and try for the final exam. The things to note here, and we'll cover one, let's see. Obviously, here is within a timely manner, and if I remember correctly, that is Mom's handwriting. I could be misremembering that one. Within timely 6 months. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. That's Mary's handwriting. So, but Mary never went to this school in the schoolhouse. So that's open to some interpretation of why that is there in her handwriting. And then the last bit over here, of course, is the letter from the teacher who taught here for 38 years from the time it was opened to the time it was closed. And if you do the math, when Herbert started here, he was 8 years old, which means when this schoolhouse closed down, Herbert was 46 years old. Also, Mary was 8 years old. So we are going to keep on coming across those numbers every chance we can, of course. Let's see. Yeah, because 1966. Yep, there we go. There's that. And 1958, Mary Matthew Epson, born to Lady Clara and Simon H. Sinclair. So, assuming the birth certificate was at least telling the truth on what year, Mary was 8 years old when this closed down. So, 8 when it was up. Herbert 8 when it was opened. 46 when it closed. Mary 8 when it was closed. So we have the closing address from the unnamed teacher. We know nothing about this person other than that they have been a teacher for all this time and are handing this off to Mrs. Peterson. For the last 38 years, it has been my pleasure of serving as your schoolmaster in this humble little facility. As meager as it may look by modern standards, I think most of us who spent our afternoons here will readily admit that we are reluctant to see this small piece of Reddington history go. I first wish to thank Lady Epson, our most gracious host lady, for not only paying attention in my classes those many years ago, but for all the fundraising she has done on behalf of our community and our children. Without her, Reddington Elementary would still be a distant and blurry vision, a vision that I dared not even dream. That dreamer is, of course, the incomparable Mrs. Peterson, our future principal and my reluctant successor, who, I might add, forced me to give this speech, so I think I'll end my praise of her there, though she deserves much more, I'll admit. To the architect of our new school, the Baron Sinclair, thank you for following in your father's footsteps in building Reddington yet another school, and for also allowing the use of your own private residence and floor plans to serve as our interim facility until the new campus is completed in March. A decision I'm certain he will immediately regret tomorrow morning when he hears the children running through the halls. And lastly, I wish to thank all of my students, many of you here today whom I have not seen in years, whose faces I still remember as young and manners wild. Those here whose parents before them I have also taught, and whose children I may yet. Without you, I would have had a lifetime of quiet peace. And yet what is all the peace in the world if you have no one to bestow demerits upon? Thank you all sincerely, for my time here has meant the world to me, and if I'm still standing in 8 months, I will see you all at the slightly less melancholic ribbon-cutting ceremony next year. Better joke to end? Remember to give Mrs. Peterson her gift. So 8 months before, and it was supposed to open in March, so that would put this at, what, July? March, February, January, December, November, October, September, August. Okay, so August-ish. So the beginning of the new school year, essentially, if their school years are anything like I'll go with American only because I don't know what European school calendars look like. I just know ours operate on roughly a August to June-ish schedule. All of these are a dead end of one form or another, so let's just take the morning room, get some more gems, so that when and if classrooms actually start showing up, we can talk about them. Also, this is on my list of things that I did not talk about when they came up. So, I did not talk at all about the morning room, much less read the newspaper that's here. So we have the morning room. The best thing to go with breakfast is a morning newspaper and a coffee. I'm not so sure about the newspaper. I do review my news articles from the previous day in the mornings while I drink my coffee, so close enough, I suppose. So this is November 5th, which is the day after Herbert passed away. Herbert passed on the 4th on Wednesday. So this is the 5th, which is Thursday, and then 2 days later would be day 1 of the game, obviously. The Baron of Mount Holly names nephew provisional heir. In the blue hours of Wednesday morning, the venerable Baron of Mount Holly, Herbert S. Sinclair, passed away at the ripe age of 73 after a prolonged struggle with a heart condition that had been kept from the public eye until his final days. Esteemed as a pillar of society and renowned for his penchant for crafting puzzles, he was a source of endless fascination to our readers over the years, not least through his popular column Baron Bafflers, which he penned for over a decade. The particulars of the announcement of his successor yesterday had left his devoted followers with one last intrigue to ponder. The reading of his will precipitated a flurry of speculation, for his niece and presumptive heir, the much beloved and lamented Mary Matthew Jones, has been missing, presumed deceased, for the past 6 years. Mrs. Jones, better known to our readers by her pen name, Marian Marigold, enchanted the hearts and minds of children across the realm with her literary creations, such as The Red Prince, Swimbird, and A New Clue. Her disappearance remains one of the age's most tragic mysteries. With her whereabouts unknown, it was Marigold's own son, Simon P. Jones, a lad of but 14 summers, who was yesterday named the provisional heir to the sprawling Cinca Empire. However, this vast inheritance is accompanied by an undisclosed contractual condition. Given the Baron's well-known penchant for tests of mettle and wit, it's clear the young heir from Reddington, distinguished in his own right as last year's County Science Fair runner-up, faces an extraordinary challenge in the coming weeks. More to follow. And this doesn't really tell us a whole lot except giving a more exact timeline. The reading of the will was yesterday, the day he died. So that was presumably the same day that his body was probably laid out in the funeral parlor, and they had the viewing and the sort of the ceremonies around his death, etc. Whatever this realm's versions of those look like. And then with the reading of the will, Simon would have been named the heir, and then he's got just a couple of days to sort of get things together and set himself up to head out before he starts staying here at the house. I mean, it's a very fast turnaround, all things considered. There's not a whole lot else to really talk about on this one, except the fact that he had a heart condition that wasn't disclosed. So there's a few times when his absence is, like specifically where his health comes up during the hunt that he missed out on when it was at KL and Lord Evanson were visiting the manor. That he skipped the hunt either because he was off somewhere else, or he could have been in Reddington at the hospital, or he could have just stayed home for his health and not gone on the hunt. But presumably that's tied to his health and his ongoing heart condition, one way or the other. And the fact that the other thing to keep in mind here is that, again, Simon inherits a lot. He gets the title of Baron, and specifically the Baron of Mount Holly. He gets the manor at Mount Holly. Those are technically two distinct things. And he is the heir to the Cinca Empire, the company that the family built that owns all the products that we see across the game, with the inkwells and the sewing machines and the safes and damn near everything they could slap a label on in this thing, it seems sometimes. Except the coffee, apparently. But, yes, I mean, Simon is coming into a lot with that one thing. And as we'll see towards the very end of things, again, being the Baron of Mount Holly, and being the owner of this house are two separate things. And it's a distinction that really isn't that important, and you don't necessarily realize until you get to the rough draft of the house. Alright, let's see here. I'm going to check this off now. Green rooms. I did talk about the morning room. Okay, where are we now? We have our first classroom. Excellent. And let's go ahead and draft this way. I really wanted something else, but I guess we'll go with the closet. Okay, grade 1. Eat the apple. Although sometimes I leave the apple there just in case I get an experiment for eating apples, so I may hold off on future ones now that I stop and think about it for more than 2 seconds. Okay, the classroom. An exact copy of the floor plan used in the architectural design of Reddington Elementary. These copies were deployed in Mount Holly as a short-term solution to allow the curriculum to continue uninterrupted while the new school was being built in town. Obviously, this is what we were just talking about. These were built by Herbert, as I mentioned, and it doesn't specifically say Herbert. It just says the Baron Sinclair. But it also mentions that your father built the other school, and that would seem to be referring to Tomas building the schoolhouse that is here at Mount Holly, or it could also refer to another schoolhouse in Reddington proper, like I was saying, that they might have a separate school there. That would make sense. And it would also make sense that, Tomas helps out the local town. He's the Baron of this part of this area, that he might help out by building the elementary school in town that just needs replacing. The letter makes it sound like this is the one and only schoolhouse, though. And that may be what Tonda Ross was going for. It just seems really strange that a city the size of Reddington, all of the children would be going into this one little schoolhouse at Mount Holly every day. It makes more sense to me that there would be a local one, and that Tomas Sinclair may have built that one as well. But it sounds, I will admit, it sounds more like from the letter that it's only referring to the one and only schoolhouse here at Mount Holly that is the local elementary school for everybody. I prefer to think of it the other way, but I will admit that the evidence might be slightly against me. So obviously, the classrooms are all different based on what grade you get, and we'll just kind of briefly, there's a couple things to note here. Obviously, everybody writes in their favorite color is red. Benny writes his favorite color is red and gets most of everything right here, except for the lizard and, a flag. Pretty good job for Benny. Freddy also likes the color red, we might add. Okay? And this is the main thing you learn here is the colors of those 3 flags. Caleb did not write that his favorite color is red. The teacher wrote that in. It's written in the red ink, in her grading paper ink. What Caleb did color red was the other realm flags that are here. That's the only things he colored red other than things that are supposed to be red. There's a possibility, and this is my theory at least, that this is Caleb Manning as a child who already has kind of an awareness of what's going on with the Fen government and their usurping the control of what was Arinda Ares, and is pushing politically for more control. And this is him coloring in the other realm flags as with that awareness. So her's like, oh, you must really like the color red. No, he is already at a relatively young age aware of the nature of the Fen government and the sort of political pressures that they apply and how they came to power. And someday he will go on to write the history of Arindia and it does not necessarily look as good for the Fen government, and certainly is more complimentary toward the realm before them. So, like most people, I think, I saw this and was like, yeah, wow, this Caleb kid really likes red. And it was only when I really went back and started paying attention to things when I was writing the lore video that I realized, wait a second, that he didn't write that. So, wait a second. And by that time, I'd seen Caleb Manning's name come up, obviously, etc., etc. So that's when I was like, well, I don't think that that's what he was saying here. And he did not write that. Also, welcome in, Smithers. How's it going? We are just still relatively young in this day. There's not a whole lot else on here to show in this classroom. Obviously, this is one. If you haven't figured out the puzzle picture pairings yet, here's one more clue to point you in the right direction. Game is kind of full of those. Let's see. Obviously, I don't want to do any of those. Ooh, we can get a laboratory experiment going. Do that. Maybe something with apples? Wait a second. Have I... On this... Yeah, we have satellite dish up. Okay, but I don't remember if I have set the experiment packets yet. I don't think I have. Okay, glad I thought of that before I activated the experiment. Because once you have picked the experiment, say, show me, and start crafting it, then you're locked in on your choices. But if you can do this first, then you can maybe get some of the new experiment triggers going. Okay, and now... we have not done emails here yet since we got that unlocked, so let's go through these really fast. So, April 4th, 1987. So, again, in frickin' fruit flies. So, in 87, this is after Mary's disappearance, been during the time when she and the others are safely hiding out in the safe house. And so these emails really, to me, just sort of tell me that life is going on and not everybody knows what's going on with Mary and company. They're just living their life up here. So we say, Randolph, as I know you've been conducting temperature-related experiments this past week, I tried my best to avoid accessing my frozen stock during your normal working hours. However, on Friday I was making my famous black truffle pizza and had to visit the freezer for a few ingredients. I hope I didn't mess anything up. Chef de Camp. Reckon eyes. Chef, please don't worry too much about the freezer access. The experiments we're doing aren't very sensitive, and they're already accounted for normal variations due to expected use and staff traffic. However, surprisingly, we did see a major temperature rise on Friday, which I believe may be related not to your freezer visit, but for the use of the furnace in close proximity. In future, you should try to draft that a bit further away, as the temperature rise from drafting that room has a major effect on temperature in the house, and even more so in rooms in close proximity to it. Randolph. Now, we fast forward a few months to August 27th, so this is closing in on the day of the heist. Baron Sinclair, as we discussed in our meeting earlier this week, we will be sealing off the entrance to the Blackbridge server this week, as well as archiving all our electronic mailboxes and locking access. I'm not sure just how tech-savvy we can expect the Red Guard to be, but there's more than enough data on our servers that these extra precautions are, in my opinion, the very minimum measures that we should be considering given the likelihood of an investigation next month. Randolph. So they are fully aware that that Mary's actions could result in an investigation by the Red Guard, and they've already had the Red Guard sniffing around Detective Von Margle in particular sometime over the past several months, ever since her disappearance. So now they're like, well, with this heist, there's a really good chance they're going to come back here, so let's make sure we lock everything down here. And of course, Herbert replies on August 31st. Lock it down. Lock it all down. The next day is September 1st, which leads literally right up into the heist. The crown is stolen at 1:30 a.m. on September the 2nd. So this is right before things go down. And that's all we get out of that. Let's see. Yeah, Smithers. The Smithers says something weird. Noticed lately that none of the Red Prince books I found have a publishing mark or date like other published books. I pointed that out when we came across one, and I was like, none of the other books do, except there are actually some of the books that don't have publication dates or marks on them. So Red Prince isn't the only one, but it does stand out. All right, now we need packet management. Okay, apples, definitely. Security doors. Bedrooms can be used quite effectively sometimes if you get lucky. Trash, obviously great. Moral room, sometimes. That's the first one's going to go if I have enough, though. Upgraded floor plan, hell yes. Fireplace works great. And is that it? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I just need only one more. Shop room, I sometimes get good use out of. I don't like that one because it's just, it depends on the drawing room coming up a whole lot in drafting and not being chosen. Terminal, no, there's, very few options for that to work. I'm going to leave that one in there mainly because sometimes there are days when just to clear out boxes, it's worth it to just pull up your map and clear crates and clear like, 8 or 9 crates all at once, depending on how many steps you have and how many you can glean in the meantime, and just take a day and just clear crates out. And it's a quick way to get, 8 to 10 crates out of the way. So I'm going to leave that one in there for now. And since that one's in, I'm going to take out the shop because I don't want to dilute my experiment trigger pool too much. But I attempted to lower the reservoir while riding the boat to the safe house. No. I think I remember someone saying that they did something where they used that one, and so while they were in the safe house, they activated their map a few times and had the experiment result of lowering the reservoir level, and they actually trapped themselves in the safe house. I think I remember someone in Sanctum chat saying they did that. Let's see. I love adding the small chests. Stars, nice. Dirt. Letter, because we're going to try to get the letters done. Allowance. Pantry fruit, just because it's funny. Crap, I don't think I powered the pump room yet in this file. I said at the very beginning that I have a separate account that I've been playing early days on my Steam file, and I've done a bunch of stuff there, and I might get some things confused for what I've done on one versus the other. So I know I've powered the pump room there. I don't think I've done it here. Definitely the crate, obviously. Lockpicking skills, yes. For now, I'm going to leave the reservoir alone because it's not that difficult to pull off once you know what you're doing. So I'm just going to leave that one alone. I can always change it later if I want to. Okay, so now that we have a customized packet available. Hey, each time you eat an apple, remove a crate. Alrighty then. Yeah, you trap yourself in the safe house, but the game breaks if you do it on the way. Oh, I didn't actually realize you could open the map on the boat. I've never really tried, so. Let's not do that. Okay, grade 2. has one very interesting thing in it. We have, okay, classroom puzzle, you must spot the difference, same thing. This is where you learn how to do math if you did not put it together from all of the dartboard clues. So the math here, all of the basic stuff, you know, nothing advanced here, nothing very surprising. But what most people I've seen play through this game miss, at least on their first time through, and usually someone has to point them in the right direction to find this. I've only seen a couple of people come across this naturally. If I remember correctly, I found this my first time through and just sort of filed it away for future reference. But this is to the attention of Mrs. Hannah Peterson, who we know is the teacher at the school for this year in town. And it says, Hannah, after a few false leads, I managed to track down one of the old textbooks from your list. The original compendium was in archival storage on a restricted floor of the campus library, to which I fortunately still have access. However, I'm devastated to report that pages 36 and 37 pertaining to your query have been removed. It's such a shame that the progress of higher academia is constantly thwarted by the political whims of the CBE. If you wish, I can transcribe the surviving pages and send them to you, but I don't believe there's any mention of cores of any kind in their text. Your friend, Professor L. Charity. So this one, I put this together, obviously, after I found Orve's letter hidden in the foreman's office down below, that the pages that you find down there in the file cabinet, which we haven't gotten to yet, are pages 36 and 37, ripped out of this book, what is it, the Mass that built the world of tomorrow or yesterday or something like that. I forget the name of the book off the top of my head. It's on the pages there, though. And so the weird thing is that Hannah Peterson would be looking for information on coring. It used to be considered a holy concept back in like the first or second era, but by the third era it fell out of use and people considered it a something that was holding back progress in math because it was such a stupid concept. And so it's weird that she's looking for that information now, considering it went out of vogue centuries ago, most likely. We have an inexact timeline of the pre-6th era times, or pre-5th era, really. And so it's strange that she's looking for it, but we don't really know anything beyond that of why she might have been looking for it. It certainly seems that a teacher in Fen Aries who surrounds herself with red flags and writes in red ink, although that's sort of normal for a teacher, probably is not herself subversive in some way. But could be possible. We don't know. We know nothing about Mrs. Peterson. So... But if nothing else, this is just sort of help you put together that those pages exist somewhere and what can you do, what are they about, etc. But there's not a whole lot else about this. But it is an interesting little tidbit of lore to just be sitting here left in this classroom. All right, let's keep going. All right, I've been talking about the library. We're going to do the library. If nothing else, it's also another redraw when we get to a classroom. All right, so we have our first book reading out from the library, the Sightseer's Guide to Reddington. Go back. Checkout card, there we go. It's been so long since I've actually pulled this up on my PlayStation. The checkout here of Lord Evanston obviously coincides, we think, with the date that KL wrote the letter that was in the guest bedroom about the dartboard, and also that would have been the hunt that Herbert missed out on, if that coincides. It's one of those things where we have the name drop of Lord Evanston, we have this name drop of Lord Evanston, so we sort of assume they're at the same time just to help us piece a timeline together, but we technically don't know that the dartboard puzzle letter from KL and this book checkout were at the same time. Similarly, M. Lowry checks this out 1 week before May 2nd, coincides with the timeline of that letter being written in the parlor, when we've already talked about the potential timing discrepancies of the parlor box, of when he's giving him the rules to how it works compared to when certain parlor boxes elsewhere in this house and on the grounds must have been constructed, etc. We already covered those in the earlier days, but this book has some surprising tie-ins just when those events would have happened to help us sort of pinpoint things. And Lord Evanston is written in blue, yes. I don't know that tells us much, but... Alright. A Sightseer's Guide to Reddington, a modest account of our town by Sir Andrew Darrell. Also, no publication date or publishing house, so... yeah, well, we got nothing. Introduction. The third largest city in Fenrir is the site of its former capital. Reddington is synonymous with mountains, mystery, and magic. Most tourists head straight for the boardwalk and don't get much further than the botanical gardens. However, Reddington has much more to offer. Spectacular scenery, a historic castle, and a charming underground bazaar reward visitors who wish to explore further. Reddington is that type of unique, enchanting place that lingers in your mind and your memories long after you leave her. The Botanical Gardens. Reddington's most popular attraction and a guaranteed crowd-pleaser, the Botanical Gardens is loved by both locals and visitors for its azure and canopy house and mausoleum, its petal-covered trails, and a mind-boggling variety of flowers. This is the reason springtime in Reddington's busy season. Situated just east of town, the Botanical Gardens offer a scenic and captivating tableau of the natural countryside. A cobblestone trail meanders past over 1,000 species of tropical plants, each remarkable in its own right, yet even more stunning set against the spectacular backdrop of the Reddington Mountains. Allow yourself at least an hour to indulge in this picturesque walk, which concludes at Mainway Station. Featherfall Keep. You will find, sitting at the base of Mount Perma, Reddington's second highest summit, a historic site described by scholars as significantly important to the realm's past. Featherfall Keep, the former home of Lord William Epsom, has until recently always been a private residence, serving as a family home to the Epsons since before the Third Era. After the death of Lord Epsom, his eldest son Lionel Epsom left the estate never to return. However, the daughter stayed, maintaining the residence and its staff until her marriage in 1951. At that point, Featherfall Keep ceased to be a family residence. It began operating as a historic house museum and tourist attraction, and the estate was designated a National Historic Landmark in 1972. It is still believed by many that Featherfall was built by the first king of Orinda Ares when Reddington was still the capital. However, surface documents containing conflicting dates have recently cast some doubt on this long-standing myth. Trinsdale Lake. Close your eyes and imagine tranquil, serene stillness, rolling fogs, clear water, and gliding swans. In the midst of all that beauty sits Trinsdale Lake, one of Fenrir's premier vacation destinations, exclusive for its more privileged citizens. The lakeside resort and cabins have been frequented by royalty and the realm's gentry for generations. However, on the southern shore of the lake, tourists are free to enjoy the views and rub elbows with the rich and famous in the 100 Bells Tea Room, which is open to the general public for lunch on Mondays and Fridays. Mount Holly. At an elevation of 11,220 feet, Mount Holly is the tallest mountain in the Reddington Range, and the highest peak in the entire realm. Beyond the physical challenge itself, climbing Mount Holly Trail is a beautiful experience, and one that many hikers and explorers will want to do at least once. It's only a few hours from Reddington to get to the trailhead, and you won't need any local guides or special gear if you tackle the trail during the summer season. However, those willing to give this mountain a significant amount of planning and research will be greatly rewarded, whether or not they actually summit. On the opposite side of the peak, far from the trail, rests the estate of Mount Holly, nestled between the summit's northern slope and saddle. This 80-acre mountain residence is almost as old as Reddington itself. However, unlike Featherfall Keep, the property has been completely private since the closing of the Mount Holly Schoolhouse in '66. Still, Hikers will be able to appreciate the house's unique architecture at a distance from one of the trail's many north-facing overlooks. Mainway Station Bazaar. For the sentimental tourists wishing to pick up a souvenir to remember their stay, one might try braving the Mainway Station Bazaar. But don't be too hasty. Without proper guidance, the Mainway Station can be a dangerous place. Located underground, this unique marketplace was once Reddington's central railway station, in a time when the realm's trains were still in service. Now the turnstiles, footbridge, and platform have been appropriated and turned into a cavern of tents and torches. Whether you are bargain hunting, looking for adventure, or finding a memento to commemorate your visit, the Mainway Station Bazaar will be a worthy conclusion to your sightseeing adventure in Reddington. And we have a nice map. There's a lot that bears talking about in this book in particular. Let's see, Hollymead. Yep. So, as Smithers is just saying, when I was looking back and building the complete history video that I did, I had not seen anybody else mention it. So I looked it up and saw Ilex Ex Messervei, and it is a real plant in our world, and it is commonly called blue holly. It is a dioecious plant. Holly is in general, meaning that the male plants and the female plants are separate plants, and the female plants that have the berries, and that's what you see here, and also what you see in the Mount Holly logo with the mountain with the 3 dots as the berries, that is the female plant, and it's called the Blue Princess. The male version of the plant is called the Blue Prince. So one of the umpteen cajillion tie-ins and verbal puns and uses of that term that Tonda Ross was able to tie into this game somehow. But I, again, thought it was really clever, and it just shows layers of your understanding of this world in this particular part of the region. The one thing that I think has a problem, though, is generally when we get to the Curse of Blackbridge, and we'll talk about this all over again, it's the berry picker from Oris, and they talk about berries, and there's a photo in the book of what looks to be holly berries. Holly berries are poisonous, and if that's what they're talking about in the book that Jesper is gathering and everybody's eating, they're all in for some ridiculously sore stomachs and other gastrointestinal problems if they eat a whole bunch of those berries especially. So while it sounds like those berries place the action of that book right around Mount Holly, I think that's either a mistake on the author or by Tonda Ross, that those cannot possibly have been a main part of the bandits' diet. Otherwise, bad. But it is cool that again, the tie-ins, and there's more things to talk about here. But Featherfall Keep, as they say, believed to have been built by the first king of Arinda Ares. So this is Second Era, when the realm was split by Ares the First. Then the first king of Arinda Ares would have been Ares the Second, and so that's when Featherfall Keep was built. It doesn't say specifically it was built for the Epson family, but they could very well have been around back then already and had close ties to the Ares family. Anything that far back, we have very sketchy information on, and there's a lot of suppositions and some, well, that would make sense if it was like that, but we really don't know for sure. Obviously, when William Epson passed away, it says Lionel Epson left the estate never to return. If there are, we've talked about before, there are theories that either Clara or Mary was actually a member of the Erajan JRE family and or part of the Desolé offshoot, etc. And so if Clara was actually Caitlin JRE, for instance, is one of the theories, Lionel might know that, and what does his absence say about that scenario? I don't know, I'm just throwing it out there. If Clara is his legitimate sister, he still made a, then he may not have felt that problem with leaving. I mean, we know very little about Lionel other than the fact that he just takes off, and we never hear from him again. and Herbert leaves Lionel Clara's will and the key to the will or not her will, her diary and the key to the diary in his will, should Lionel ever show up to claim them. They're still here on the manor grounds, so obviously Lionel nor his descendants have ever showed up to claim them. So that's literally all we know about Lionel right there. This does tell us when Clara and Simon Sinclair were married, 1951, and then 2 decades later, designated a National Historic Landmark. And then it says at the very end here that this recently surfaced documents contain conflicting dates, cast doubts on this. I would submit, and my theory is that the recently discovered documents casting doubt on this are to sort of provide some distance between the Epson family and the old families of Arindia, whether that be the Desolays or the Ares family, because the Fen government doesn't really look too kindly on the previous governments and royal houses. So they're putting a little distance, saying, nah, that's just myth, rumor. They didn't really do that. We're not that tight, you know. So I think that's the sort of thing that's going on there. We don't know for sure either way. But that's the sort of thing, again, that, like I said, we don't know for sure, but it kind of makes sense. Trinsdale, this tells us where the 100 Bells tea room is. We saw the card with Mary's handwriting on it down in the basement. And we know that she left the 100 Bells tea room shortly before she disappeared. Or really, at the time she disappeared, that was the last place she was seen. Mount Holly. This paragraph here about the 80-acre was completely private since the closing of the Mount Holly Schoolhouse. Sounds up front like it's supporting that this was the schoolhouse that everybody came to. So again, it provides evidence against my theory, I fully admit, but that doesn't necessarily mean that this was the only schoolhouse, just that other people other than the private family came to the schoolhouse, which is still part of my theory, with Clara coming and any other noble families that were so invited by Orve. So it doesn't disprove my theory, but it provides more evidence against it if you interpret it one way. So, yeah. Again, I'm being honest about how much proof there is for my theories and where they're weak. The Mainway Station Bazaar, it sort of reinforces the idea that the train stations here in Fen Ares are kaput, as they were torn out in the 6th era, and it's cool that they tie it and say, oh, this is a bazaar that used to be here. This could be, I don't think it is, but it could be where the Children of Blackwater came out. We don't know exactly where they emerged and what railways they used specifically once they left the Royal Station. They may have just come up here north to the bazaar and then snuck out in Reddington and then headed west towards Fen to do the heist, or they may have taken the trainways further along. I don't know that they would have wanted to stay down there. We don't know how active the train system is in Fen. The internal Fen railway might still survive in some places. I kind of doubt it, though. So, it's how much of it is accessible, how much of it would have been blocked off and versus torn up. We don't know enough. We do know that the main thoroughfares of the railways, going from Miraja up to Arch Ares across Fen, were torn up. But some of the internal railways might have survived. We don't know. Obviously, there is some form of connections in the Fen Museum that still survived, but it wasn't a practical route for our thieves to use. Now, my beef about this map, and I'm sorry for Twitch, y'all won't be able to see the map that I put up by comparison, but this map lines up very well with the map that you see in the classroom. And when we get to if we get at geography this day, then I'll show you. But this bears very little resemblance to the geography around this particular area on the globe map, or the full-size maps that we see in geography, and on the globe itself, actually. Because this looked like that the Aran River there, or Arias River, Arias. looks like a nice navigable little river. Hey, look, there's a little bridge across it, and there's a little fork in the river that goes down, and then it goes off, to the east. No big deal. If you look at the map, that Arias River is the gap between the continents of Fen Aries and Arch Aries. That's a sizable gap of water between the two, and I'm sure there is probably a bridge over it somewhere, but it's not nearly the scale that they show here. And that area that's built up that looks like a nice clean little fork in the river, and the delta that's there, that's a wide open area of water on the map, and it makes placing stuff in this geography a little difficult. And I go into it a little bit more, and I show the overlapping maps and sort of describe it a little more in detail on the Curse of Blackbridge lore video that I did, and I'll put a little bit of map up here for comparison. But for now, it's just the geography of this area drove me crazy trying to reconcile it. And then when you try and reconcile the train map from underground, its scale is not Tonda Ross's strong point, I think, when he's making maps. Let's just leave it at that. But it is a useful map. It shows us where Tanner Fork is in relation to Mount Holly, where Reddington, the Botanical Gardens are there. You can see Mount Perma. It looks like you should be able to look from Mount Holly across Reddington and see Mount Perma. You can't see anything from the overlook where you get the throne room. There's no mountain that stands out as necessarily taller than the rest, and certainly not across Reddington. So it's a little hard to tell if there is one that's specifically supposed to be. I know you cannot see Featherfall anywhere detailed in the distance, but I don't know if there's anything else to show here. The Angel Tower is referenced on one of the other maps. There's the 100 Bells Tea Room, and is that Burrow's End? It's really hard to read, and I don't have a magnifying glass right now. But yeah, there's a lot of detail on the map. It's just very difficult to make out some of the things you might be looking for. And when we were here, I didn't go upstairs. It's worth taking a look now, just to show. The records that are here track all sorts of things: your longest days, average days, times. That track what day you were on and how long it took you to get to room 46. I don't even want to know what some of these numbers show on my main files. 7 upgrade discs so far, you say? Okay. That lines up with what I have on my tracking sheet, so good to know I haven't made any mistakes there. The scrapbook here does change slightly as you use things. So some of the things you see pinned on there will change. Obviously these will change as it's your most drafted or the one you pay for the most, etc. I've only got these 2 contraptions, as I said. No stamps yet. Someday, yeah, maybe we'll get there eventually. And so far we're at grade 2. So the scrapbook has some information in it, not anything lore-wise really that shows up there per se, but it's interesting to check every now and then. And keys are almost always worth using to open a trunk. I'd much rather have a sledgehammer, but oh, those would be nice. All right, on with the quest. Hey, look, another classroom. Okay, grade 3. Let's remove another crate, please. This one, not a whole lot to this place, honestly. There's not really much to look at in here. The classroom, I don't know why they think this is something to teach in school, assuming it actually was. This obviously helps you figure out the puzzle in the laboratory if you need the help. It did not strike me as that difficult of a puzzle to figure out with the periodic table right there on the wall. So, but, hey, this game is all about giving you lots of multiple ways to figure out the answers to most of the puzzles. And of course, there is one of the funniest ones on here. H2O and Gaseous State is called Mrs. Peterson. Disrespectful. See me after class. I love that one. Quinn, you're an awesome student. Never change. There's nothing really hidden here. I'm sure people have gone on about, the vases and the what? I guess that's a sheep. I'm going to go with sheep, and we'll, avoid questions. Not a whole lot here. Oh, I did not go through the blue tent memos on the first two classrooms. Let me get my... Yeah, I have them all here. The grade 1 blue tent memo is flag colors: green for Nuance, pink for Vera, orange for Kararka. So it's color based because that's the color classroom. So it just helps you know some of the realm colors if you have not figured them out by that time that you're getting blue tent memos. Not the most helpful memo, to be honest. Grade 2. The figure of 8, in its symbolic guise as the infinity sign, has long served as a vessel for both death and the unfathomable. And we see that play out elsewhere. Obviously, almost every 8 you see, there's a good chance that it's going to be on its side as an infinity sign there. And it's on the bottom of the southern key in the geography map on the wall. And the South Pole expeditions there all failed, and we'll get to that blue tent memo when we get to that classroom. This grade 3 class blue tent memo: the scientific foundation of architecture, drafting, and combining advanced principles of spatial suspension and temporal anchoring was developed and refined at the Farius High Institute of Kararka at the beginning of their realm's 15th era, which tells us quite a bit, actually. Number one is that the rooms, drafting of the rooms, and that they're not there until you draft them. So where are they in existence? They're in this other spatial distortion, blah, blah, blah. That is a science that's not magic. It maybe have been based on mysticism. And so one question that I still have is, yes, it was developed and scientifically worked out, etc., in Kararka's 15th era. We have no idea what era they're in now, where 15th era relies in relation to any of the Urindian eras. And so it's possible that the sort of mysticism of Eurasian ancestors, because we know that they're sort of a separate ancestral root, and we'll talk about that when we get to geography, they're heavily into the mystic side of things, and poetry and that sort of thing. And so it's possible they had something like that developed and treated it as magic and mysticism. And then here come the Westerners are like, whoa, we can do that too. Okay, let's study this. Let's figure out the workings of how it goes. Let's do science on it. And they've, built the rules, and they, etc. And they built these institutes of higher education upon it, and, imposed the rules and all this, and discovered things scientifically, as opposed to handed down from father to son generations, mysticism, etc., that might have happened in a more tribal historical area of Eurasia in their early days. A lot of that supposition, don't get me wrong, but it doesn't mean that the drafting of rooms and everything was invented, just that the scientific foundation of architectural drafting and everything was done in Kararka at the university that they mentioned. So that tells us a lot about just, that's where everything was sort of formalized and the scientific foundation of it was laid, not necessarily where it was invented. It could have been going on for centuries before that in the New World, perhaps. We don't know. And again, we don't know the relation between the 15th era of Kararka and any of the eras of Orindia or Nevmora. Let's see. And then, yeah. I think that was everything to talk about on that one. All right, let's see what other kind of trouble we can get into here. All right, we're up to geography. Let's say geography. We were talking about the South Pole and the expeditions. The blue tent memo for the grade 4 classroom: of the 3 major expeditions to the South Key, only one party returned. Their cartographers among them conducted a cautious survey of the coastline, but refrained from making landfall. So this obviously is where you start learning realm sigils and locations on the map, and then putting them together with the names if you haven't already figured a lot of that stuff out. So the southern keys here, as I said, there's the infinity symbol. So that South Pole there, their version of Antarctica, very deadly place apparently for them. There's so much on these maps. It's sort of hard to go over everything, and there are still theories being worked out and puzzled through and whatnot on a large part of these. So I don't know of anything specific to the North Circle that's really important, much less the 5 core Arcan Hearts there, the mountains leading up to it. The dudes on the bottom there are carrying what look like to be parlor boxes, and you see the symbols above their heads are the same symbols that you find on the cursed coffer. And the description that you get when in the Curse of Blackbridge that Jesper mentions, like his first glance he's looking at, is the totemic symbols indicating the old world or something to that effect. So the coffer that the cursed effigy resides in seems to have come from Morrowind in the old world, and so it's a nice old box. And so you see the mystic dudes down there carrying the boxes, the sacred circle going on in the bottom right corner. Obviously, that is one of the main ways that people discover the meaning of Tor and lore. Excuse me, not lore, but Tor and Rote, excuse me. And for use in the castle cipher. And of course, in the top right, we have the Spiral of Stars, which we're not going to talk about by itself today. The things worth mentioning here, you see in the naming conventions, you see Aj along the equator on the eastern side of this. Aj lines up with first or number 1 from Ajera, the first era. And so this would be the first sea. Not, it's sort of hard to ascribe meaning to some of these things, but, and then down the south we have Seja, and so that is the last sea, and since it's around the deadly South Pole, first sea could refer to the sun rising in the east and life starting with a new day, that sort of thing, like, just that imagery of sunlight, birth of a new day, birth of life, etc. And the South Pole having the symbol for death on it, and the last sea is the name. I don't know, spaghetti at the wall at this point, but that's the sort of thing we get when we have very little information about this world. And then the Great Tress, I forget if we know a translation for tress off the top of my head, but it would seem to be some sort of a divide or something. I don't remember what there is to do on that one. The Et Sphere, of course, the other one is the Ore Sphere, the Western Hemisphere. This is the Et Sphere, the Eastern Hemisphere. And remember, this is all during the Third Era, so this is after the realm has been divided and has been under the rule of House Ares for potentially a few generations. So we see the the In Sea up top. Sorry, it's hard to read without the magnifying glass. Up at the north, and then the other sea here, we have the Ore Sea, which it's in the eastern part of this map, but presumably it's called the Ore Sea because of it was named by Morrowind citizens from on the other side of the world, which to them would have been the west, so it would have been the Western Sea for them. That's the only explanation I got, but the fact that they give us the name on the eastern side of this one is slightly confusing, so you got to kind of put it together. But you can see the gap between the continents like I was talking about, that as the water, and I'm doing this in reverse here, so bear with me, as the water comes across the south end, from going from west to east, you see it coming across the top of Fen Ares, and then it comes down, and right where it comes down and meets the sea again, there's that little, blob of a lake that comes off it. That's Trinsdale Lake. And then the nice, neat fork in the river, that's that chunk of land taken out that's right on the equator there. That's that nice, neat little fork in the river on that other map. So you can see why I don't like the way that map is portrayed versus this one. It looks nothing like it. The sea that I find interesting, that it's part of my theories at least, is the Edge Sea, between Nuance, Arinda Aries, and Araja. And to me, since we know that Alzara is mentioned to be an Ejera soothsayer from the court of Aries. House Aries ruled Arindia in the second and third eras. And so, to me, those mean like either second era or what I think it means is sort of like an inner era. So, not the beginning, not the end, somewhere in the middle, and it sort of means inner, like an inner era. And so it was an inner era in the court of Aries, so that helps place where he was. And then the reverse of edge is J, so not inner, but outer or out from. And so that's where I think Jari comes from, is that she took that name coming out of House Aries. And that's where I think the name came from. It's my theory. Nothing, again, we have no proof one way or the other, so that's just what makes sense to me, at least. We have Nuance and further Nuance to the south of that. Nuance, of course, came to the aid of the would-be Fen government when they were rebelling against Arinda Aries and House Desolé. And let's see. So the outer circle, we know, though, that provides the names of the 5 planets. If you don't have them elsewhere, or on the coming south, you have the Ineclipse and Iseclipse with Rinna and Vea on either side. Rinna, I believe, is referred to as getting. Did she get the soul of Arve in the Blue Testament? I want to say that's sort of a beginning and end thing for them. I give my soul to Rinna and my ashes to Vea. So Rinna and Vea closely tied, it seems, with the belief system and coming around death. So we don't, since Rinna is the gardener, it's not really sure. Do they believe in reincarnation and planting the soul anew? I don't know. But her body then goes to Vea, who was the Paragon of Ash. So it's just the fact that they've got the two of them down there seems significant in light of Arave's will. Let's see. What else is there to talk about here? The Seeker of Signs? Not a clue. I have no idea why they've got the 7 realm sigils up there of the known world at this time. Much less centered around Kararika, that it isn't even in this hemisphere. I got nothing. And I know people have tried to tie some theories around that. Below them, that's sort of a funky looking balloon being floated, and you see some of the work being done on astronomy. At the top above the globe, you see what I believe is a representation of East meets West. So this is the Western people from Moraven meeting the more tribal, spiritual, possibly mystical people of Nevmora. That possibly that's the Erajan people predominantly. And the only reason I say that is because when House Aries is breaking up Arindia into the 3 realms and they give Eraja to the daughter, it specifically mentions where the ancestors came from. And it's not clear whether they're talking about all the people or House Aries as ancestors specifically. I think it's House Aries as ancestors specifically, that their house began in some early Erajan nobility or an important family there that was elevated to nobility when Horus was establishing the realm, and you need nobilities, you need an upper class to help manage them peasants. And so having someone elevated from the Eraja, or maybe they were a family that was given lordship over Eraja or part of it, a dukedom down there, that sort of thing, could have been where House Aries was established, and lived for a few generations before they took the throne after Horus passed away, Horus III. So there's still some suppositions going on there, but again, we're in that state of, well, Makes sense. The devoted circle up top shows us the specific celestial relationship between Mora, the devoted moon, and the rogue moon. I had to look it up because I wasn't entirely sure. It is possible for a moon to have its own moon around it. It's not particularly common, I don't think, because the planet that the moon is orbiting would have a very strong tendency to just capture the smaller moon and steal it for itself or accidentally crash into it, that sort of thing. It would have to be a very special relationship and celestial distancing and makeup of the bodies themselves to allow the smaller moon to orbit the one moon without getting captured by the gravity well of the planet itself. But it is possible. And then on the far right section of the map, you see what appears to be Ares the First with his 3 children. So those are the future rulers of Arch and Arinda Ares and Araja, the 2 sons and the daughter with him. Still when they're children, but the 3 of Tides, no idea what the significance of that name is, but then we have the 3 Isles of the Orsea that are just those little dots that you kind of see over there. That's not really a whole lot else we can say about that. So, but here's that map I was referring to that lines up. Look at this nice, neat little fork in the river there. Doesn't that look nice and very contained and neat and distinct, and in no way resembles the way the land splits over on that map over there? Scale, not a big thing here, as I said. But this does tell us, okay, here's the Fen Royal Museum. We know Morning Bay. That's obviously used in the final exam. And Colossus Arinda. I'm just going to say it. That looks a little bit like Trump's profile. That's the first thing I think of when I look at that. I'm sorry. Oris. Interesting how it's portrayed. That we get the 3 mountains here that it's not the stylized Mount Holly that we see with the peak that looks like the holly leaf and gives it its name. It's this 3-peaked, more generic shape that we see all over the place. Usually in sort of the background and on wall art and stuff. But it's interesting that that's what's here and not the other one, since that's pointing directly to Mount Holly. And then Oris gets this odd little sort of a castle looking thing there. I don't even know what to make of that design, honestly. But all right, and we now have foundation, and we need to start praying for keys or backtracking to the chapel. Excellent. And money. Excellent. Even more. Okay. Walk-in closet. That is up here in the blue rooms. Okay. The stylish and smart clothes in this generously sized closet belong to the former mistress of the estate, Lady Epson. Though the small dressing room has not been used in many years, it is nevertheless kept up and preserved in the state you now find it. And the blue tent memo for this tells us about Clara Epson's burial. It says, Her Ladyship Clara Epson was laid to rest on the 11th of June, 1983. Not the date she died necessarily, but that's when she was laid to rest. If there is a distinction, we don't know if they have a time when they lay in state. Again, we know very little about the burial rites of this world, but at least we know that she was laid to rest on the 11th of June. And this is one of the prime locations to get a telescope. So if you're ever looking for it, this is one of the best places to try and find it. Also, Her Ladyship's Chamber is another one, as is the Lost and Found. And there's a nice picture of Clara Epson, distinguished by the beauty mark mole. And this is, of course, where the t-shirt shows up once you buy it. I don't know why that's a thing, but it is. Makes me kind of want the t-shirt, so maybe that was his goal. if that was his goal, he should have sold some frickin' merch then. All right, grade 5. Five triggers. I wonder if that's enough radiation. Actually. We'll see what happens after we move on. All right, the grade 5 classroom. The illustrations in the Red Prince and Swimbird were made by Marion Marigold herself. Not the most useful of blue tent memos. The cool things about this one, obviously, you see the different artwork portrayed here. Some of the kids have more skills than others. The difference between the letters on their homework is actually their grade. So Acorn and Corn, he got an A. Coincidental, or she did, excuse me, Laura. Gregory, with what I consider to be a much more clever way of doing it, got a B, because robot minus B is root. So, I don't remember when I realized that that's where the grades came from. I do remember being a little bit incensed that that kid got a B for what I thought was a pretty clever use. The ones here on the wall, not everybody stops and sees these, but Crow and Crown, so N-O-T, Stage and Sage, C-L-U-E. This is not a clue. Cheeky little troll there by Tonda. Not a whole lot else to talk about on this one. All right. I was going to use the silver key now. Dum-dum-dum-dum-dum. Okay, the lemon glazed salmon. Charbroiled Cajun spiced salmon, lemon butter sauce, and served over spinach leaf. Where do they have Cajuns in this world? Just asking. Today's main course. We have officially eaten the salmon. Okay, we have one key. One more classroom. Damn it. Okay. We need the study. And Queen, King, Bishop, Rook. I don't have a knight, do I? Crap. Security or the observatory. Kind of regretting some of those non-drafted rooms back there. All right, security and observatory. In the meantime, hello. That gives us another room to draft. What am I doing? It would have worked, obviously. But... okay, let's talk about this room really fast, and then we'll dive in on the safe. The study. After the passing of Baroness Orve, her private study was claimed by her eldest son, Herbert Sinclair. For years, he immersed himself in the countless notebooks she left behind, drawing inspiration from her discarded ideas. From mechanical puzzles to architectural blueprints, each endeavor he pursued in this room was realized in the shade of her creative legacy. I said in the drafting studio in yesterday's episode, number 2, the drafting studio says that over half the rooms in the manor were designed and drafted and realized in that room, and then I said that some of them were done here in the study. I realize this doesn't say that these rooms were actually drafted here in the study. It just says that he planned them out, and each endeavor he pursued in this room was realized. So the math I was trying to do and figuring out, how many might have been done here versus the drafting studio doesn't necessarily mean that they were drafted here. They could have just been thought up and planned out and done in his head and then taken to the actual drafting studio where all the blueprint paper actually is and the tools of the trade, etc. So I may have been wrong in what I said yesterday about some of them were actually done here, but the ideas were certainly thought up and pursued here, and the ideas that he had for the rooms. At the very least, I think we could say that. They may well have been drawn here as well, but I think it might be more along the lines of he had the ideas, looking through her books, planned them out, then took all his ideas over to the drafting studio and actually did the work over there. But anyway, the blue tent for the study. This is one of my favorite rooms in the house, actually. Is the chessboard in this room contains a portmanteau. And this has been the subject of some debate as to whether this is actually a portmanteau or not. But it's talking about the chessboard over here. And generally speaking, one of the possible definitions of a portmanteau is just smashing two words together to get another word. So the motor hotel, it literally is, if you have a hotel and you can drive up to the front of it and park your car and then walk in from the parking lot, that is a motor hotel, otherwise known as a motel. That's where the name comes from. If it is, you park your car, then go into the building, and the doors into your rooms are on the inside of the building, not the outside of the building, then it's a hotel. But if it's, you park your car and you walk into your room from the outside of the building where the parking lot is, that is a motor hotel or a motel. So that's the definition difference between those two. So this is obviously D8 smashed together. So that's the portmanteau that it's referring to. And D8 for December 8th, hence the safe date. This is one of those ones that I solved when my brain was too tired to think straight, and I had already tried everything else I could think of in this room, and I saw that. I was like, maybe the D is December. And it was one of those days where I cracked like three of the safes in the same day or something, and it was because I was so tired I was trying the stupid stuff and I wasn't overthinking things, and it was just like, hey, it's a D and an 8, maybe it's December, and it worked. So there's a lot of that kind of stuff in my main playthrough. Red letter number 2. December the 8th. M. Be prepared for our plans to be set in motion in a month or two. It's all lining up and all of our hard work is about to come to fruition. I've just learned that several members of the museum's guard are sympathetic to our cause. We suspect 2 more to be pure opportunists whose loyalty extends only to their coin purse. Your uncle has already agreed to let us use Mount Holly's flexible floor plan for a trial run, assuming the red print we have secured from the museum's closed exhibit is in fact accurate and up to date. We should begin these trials without delay once you arrive. If you can, within the next 2 months, fabricate some fiction that might alleviate us of the presence of the servant staff. Until we meet on the shores of the White Sands. Caleb. Obviously Caleb Manning, and this is the closed exhibit floor plan that he's talking about. The timeline here, this is December the 8th of 1986, so just a couple of months before Mary disappears. You kind of get the feeling that Mary probably has been slowly getting more and more involved with the Children of Blackwater over the years, over this last year specifically. Herbert's letter in next April that was in the drawing room refers to the events of the past year having catapulted you into this situation. And so that's, from somewhere around the middle of 86 probably through that current day of when that letter was written would be the past year-ish. And so that's all leading up to her disappearance and then eventually into the heist. And so during that year, we know she went through 3 passports, for instance, the forged passports that are in the vault, 2 of which were compromised. Well, that identity is compromised, meaning she used it for something, and then, once it's been used, it's no good anymore, so that ID is burned. So she's been doing something over the past year that leads up to all these events. And the third ID that obviously hasn't been compromised is Jean Ribbon, which she's using at the time of her disappearance. So in the months before that is when those other two IDs would have been compromised, and so that's, the time leading up to this. This is the plans being set in motion. That's in a month or two is when she disappears. So, and obviously Herbert's on board with the plan and is willing to be helpful. There's only like one or two other places, I think, where we see Caleb's handwriting. But this is a good thing to compare against if you're ever wondering if something was written by Caleb. This is a solid version of his handwriting. As an adult, his handwriting, if this is in fact the Caleb that's in the school classroom that we mentioned, obviously that's all capital letters, and we don't see his actual handwriting, lowercase stuff there. So, and it's a child's handwriting anyway. Other stuff in this room. Obviously, I think there's supposed to be the picture there, so that may end up in Lost and Found at some point. I forget what was there, though. But you see some other examples. You see Cinca ink here, and the safe itself is a Cinca. Didn't point that out ahead of time. If you still haven't figured out the letter pairings, this one pretty much sets it up to smack you in the face with it, and how you're supposed to use them. There are so many different ways it tells you to figure that one out, because that is one of the first big puzzles to figure out in the game, so you have lots of different ways that you might come across how to use it. And here are just some of the possibilities that are being used. And time-wise line. I don't know if it's possible with so little time left, but I need to remember to ask Anne if we can commission new artwork for all the rooms of the house. We need them produced in sets of 2, a pair for each room. Honestly, I have no idea what I'm thinking. I'm likely delusional to think this can be pulled off by Thursday. So this would almost certainly have been written in the last week that Herbert was alive, and he passed away on Wednesday. So this is all like, can we get this done by Thursday when I'm dead already? And setting up for Simon to be here in 2 days. Obviously, not every room in the house has pictures to go with it, such as Courtyard, and the Cloister. Some of the other ones like that don't have picture pairings, but for the most part, they all do. And obviously, you run across the picture pairings in the rough draft of the house as well. I've seen this used as some justification for the theory that Herbert solved enough of his mom's cipher to get access to the rough draft and saw that there, and took the idea for the picture pairings from seeing them in use over in the rough draft. I don't think that necessarily supports that theory. I can't say that theory is wrong. I don't personally subscribe to it, but I don't think that the picture pairings are evidence of that, because we already know from the room description that Herbert spent years looking at her notes and her discarded ideas and pulling inspirations, etc. It's not that big a stretch to imagine that she mentioned the picture pairings idea somewhere in all of these books in her study, and that Herbert came across it. And when it came time to put in the puzzle for counting small gates, he's like, I've got an idea how I can make this work. This is something my mom did. This is one of her ideas. I can use that. I'll do it myself. Boom. If we count small gates, etc. So I think it's more than plausible that he just got the idea from here, rather than it requiring him to have broken into the rough draft to have that idea. Because obviously it's too similar for them to both come up with it on their own independently. That would be ridiculous. So one way or the other, he got the idea from his mom, I would say. That's pretty obvious. But like I said, I don't think it requires him to have accessed the atelier and the rough draft for him to have done this. Okay, now we need some more keys.
I haven't gotten 46 in this file yet, so I couldn't have gotten the Sanctum key and done what I thought I was going to do. But I could actually theoretically get to 46 right now. Hold on, let me do some math. Crap, I have to walk through Lost and Found. It's going to take my basement key. I have a 50-50 chance of that happening. Let's go. Alright, let's see what happens. Okay, but I gotta have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 to get to the foundation, including gymnasium steps. 9, 10, 11, 12-ish. And then 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. I might be able to just barely make it if the gymnasium wasn't there. But it's gonna take me almost certainly 24 steps to do it. How many red rooms do I have? 1, 2, 3. That's 15 steps. One, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19. Okay. At the very least, I should be, if it steals my basement key, I should still be able to get to the observatory, activate the sails, back to the kitchen, buy the tomato soup that was there. That's 15 steps, and that should get me outside, and do whatever else I need to do. If they take the basement key, I should still be able to get down to the precipice. If they don't take the basement key, I may have enough to get to the precipice and back up into 46. We'll see what happens. Okay, so we're going Great Hall. Locker room again. Up here, and this, because the tomato soup is 5, so I can afford it now. But it should be 50% off. It's like, you know what? I have, the banana would be, I'd get like 1 step more, which I might need, so. Everything, star. Not actually everything, but mostly everything. 50% off, including the kitchen. That should be enough that I can buy a tomato soup. Oh, never mind. Okay, yeah, I forgot the bananas also are cheap enough. Okay, now we've got some steps to work with. This is ridiculous. Okay. Locker room. To the classroom. 50-50 chance. Alright, no, it is what it is. Okay, so we can't take the foundation out, but I still have enough to get outside and go down to the precipice and take care of stuff. You know, sometimes this game. Alright, still accomplishing things, even if the game is doing its best to mess with me.
But now begins some of the once you have access to chest powers and you can make changes to them, you can start making some upgrades and make some differences to make your game a bit easier. While we're here, we got a couple things to read as we go. Alright, so Foreman's Log, going back into, this is 1915 in July. So this is kind of in the middle of things, if I remember correctly. July 1915. Yeah, so this is the one I think that has the elevator. No. Okay. Anyway, yeah, so the excavation started in June-ish, or June of 1915, so this is only a couple of months into things, at most. Actually about a month, come to think of it. Not even that much. Okay. As old client Lord Thomas Sinclair suspected, the arches that were visible from the south cliff were part of a much longer arcade carved into the rock face. Last week, when our crew first arrived, only 2 supporting pillars were visible, but after only a few days of clearing vines, moss and dirt, we've uncovered a dozen more. Our exploration so far has been limited and entirely superficial, as every shaft we've surveyed has ended abruptly, and every promising path leading deeper in the mountain has been blocked by tunnels packed tight with soil, rock and debris. The site is either much older than we first assumed, or someone deliberately had these chambers buried. Someone deliberately had these chambers buried, because it's not actually that old, or at least the buried nature of it is not that old. Ta-da! Bash, bash. Alright, we will discuss the castle cipher itself on another day when we're actually using it. For now, I should probably actually look where everything is. Okay, Queen is one down from the top. Office is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and the knight is above the queen. Six. You were someplace right around there. 2 in the den. And where was my nook? Right there. Okay. We're going to talk about them, and I'm going to make my choice. Alright. The resilience of the rook. You may draw floor plans up to 4 times when drafting the 4 corners of your corner rooms of your house. This is frickin' amazing in cursed mode. It's great. I love it out of cursed mode. I will abuse this power for as long as I can later on in this game. But in cursed mode, this thing is frickin' amazing. And the reason is... Did I get it? Okay, no. The reason is because you can't, when you have the conservatory, and this is the same reason I use it in regular mode, but why it shines so much in curse mode, is when you have the conservatory and you can adjust room rarities. I spent a couple of weeks in game days just going in every day, making sure I hit the 2 corners down south, and redraw until I got the conservatory. And I adjusted the rarity of as many rooms as possible. Bump up the reds to rare, blues down to common, etc. And really just adjusted the hell out of the rarities in my room directory in my curse mode run. And it was so... I did so many upgrades. I actually beat curse mode by accident because I was at the point where I'm like, okay, I think I've made enough updates. I should start thinking of changing to like king power, and then I can make things blue and make a serious go at this. I hadn't even changed to king power yet, and I just started my day and was like, okay, well, I had a compass or something, and it's like, okay, well, I'm just going, and I've got all these blue rooms, and this is actually fairly easily, and suddenly I'm finding myself all the way up, okay, I just beat curse mode. And it was because the room rarities, I had tinkered so much with the room directory that it was so easy at that point to get there. I was not intending on it at all, and I just sort of stumbled into beating curse mode. But we're not going to take this one yet. This is the one power I have never... No, I actually haven't used a couple of these, but I've never even been tempted by the Piety of the Bishop, because by the time I'm down here, 30 gold really isn't all that amazing. Like, it's nice and useful, don't get me wrong, but especially on my main run, by the time I got down here, 30 gold was nothing. But Piety of the Bishop, you do not have to pay tithes. Why would I not want to feed Hamwise? I need Hamwise to be nice and fat by the time I break him. Instead, you gain 30 coins the first time you enter the chapel each day with this power. No. King power, slightly OP. Banner of the King, each day you may choose a color. Rooms of this chosen color are more likely to be drawn while drafting. Ridiculously useful in almost any game mode or thing that you're trying to accomplish, so yeah, it's nice. I've never done the Gambit of the Queen because this just does not sound appealing. Gambit of the Queen, each time you draft a room in the Queen side, west wing of your house, lose 5 steps and gain 2 keys. I think, didn't they just change that with the most recent update? It used to be 1 key, and I think they upped it to 2 to make it slightly more appealing, but still, no. The Mantle of the Knight, add the Armory to your draft pool. The only way you can possibly draft the Armory, so, is if you have the Mantle of the Knight active. And the Ambition of the Pawn, which I think was a really cool way of doing this, is since in chess the pawn reaching rank 8, or the opposite side of the board, can turn himself into a knight, a bishop, a rook, or a queen. And so I thought that was a really clever way of doing this, but when you reach rank 8, each day you may choose knight, bishop, rook, queen, gain that power of that piece until the end of the day. So it's a way of getting the other powers without actually having to choose one for sure. I hate having to get to rank 8 each day, especially on such an early game mode timing as this is. If this was a much later file where I have all sorts of upgrades and regular things available to me, reaching rank 8 is nothing. But right now, it's not necessarily a sure thing, so I don't like taunt in general. But we're going to go with the Mantle of the Night, and we're going to have this for a few days until I am able to use the axe 3 times. And then after that, we're going to switch over to Rook for a few days, and I will be, as I said, abusing that power to use the Conservatory as much as possible, and then we'll move from the Rook to the King, and for obvious reasons for endgame players, and we'll discuss that when the time comes. Somewhere around here is the door. Right there, actually, we just passed it. That leads up to the tomb, obviously. And here is the Foreman's copy, do not remove from sight, of Realm and Rune. I'm not going to read the brokenness of this, but the working theory that I saw someone come up with of why is this here and why is it the Foreman's copy, why does he need this, etc., is that one of the things being done during the excavation time is that the Sanctum spaces, at least, possibly the sigils themselves, if not the puzzle to actually activate the space, but the Sanctum spaces are being built at the same time as all this excavation work is being done, and so one of the things that they had the foreman do was to build those 8 rooms and have the sigils put up there. It makes sense as a good an explanation as any. I don't know other reason why the foreman of an excavation company would need something describing these sigils, and it certainly got a lot of use because that book is destroyed. This room and this end down here also is slightly terrifying in cursed mode, because cursed mode is inherently much, much darker. And I got lost down here, because when you get down here and there's no frickin' light, and you can't see anything, and I got trapped here, and I think I was like looking up or something, and it's like I got lost down here because I couldn't tell which direction was what, or where I was looking, or where I was going, and it took me like a good 30 seconds or so, honestly, before I was, because I don't know if I'm looking up, I don't know if I'm looking down, so it's like, all right, if I point myself all the way down, and then I look up about what I think halfway is, and then I spin around, and I start moving, finally I found something that was light enough for me to identify as not pitch blackness, and got myself out of here, which is a stupid problem to have, especially since it happened to me again down in the tunnel before I got the torches lit. So, yeah, we all have our moments. Some are dumber than others. Anyway, this elevator, by the way, we'll talk about it whenever we get the foreman's note, but this elevator was designed and installed by Thomas Sinclair, which the use of the Arindian sigil and symbology here should tell you that he was where his loyalties and thoughts lay. This, obviously, we should not have removed enough to be of use yet, but maybe? No, not yet. Okay, there's our... Up here is where the next sort of midpoint that we're looking for is. Okay, I need to go put the power hammer away. Don't end the day yet. All in all, I mean, for an early game attempt at the classroom run, what is that, grade 6? It's not bad. A baronial campus. Right, and now I never ever have to draw Lost and Found again unless I really want to. Because we got the upgrade disc out of it, and we got the Mars Eye box out of it. If I can get it on a shelter, great. But otherwise, it's low, 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 low on my possibilities of ever drafting again list. All right, we got 8 allowance now. Check out the... Now we're rolling in, pennies. All right. Room directory, what are we missing still on outer rooms? Shrine and Diggy one. Root cellar. Root cellar it is. All right, let's hope for a dig up trash day on experiments, huh? And specifically something useful like removing crates. Let me be very clear about that game. Dig up trash experiment. Remove crates from tunnel. Ha ha! All right. The downside is we need plenty of money to workshop to afford the axe. No, commonplace, please. Yes. And I'm happy making that commonplace because it's only draftable in the wing and I can control when I'm looking for it. Okay. The Conservatory. This Baroque arboretum showcases and preserves the rarest specimens of every type and variety. Through selective propagation, the garden here may influence which flora, or flora, will be considered commonplace during the next season. Adjust the rarity of the floor plans in your house. This is one of, if not my favorite rooms in the house, just because, as I already said, that I use it to adjust the rarity, and especially in curse mode, I love being able to tinker with things and make things sort of customized by room directory. So this is I love this room. There's not a whole lot to talk about it otherwise. It was removed from the draft pool and hidden away in the weeks before Herbert died. It was one of the ones that Randolph leaves a letter mentioning that it was hidden away. It's probably one of the ones that was hidden and not one of the ones that was gone for quite some time, like the Lost and Found. The fact that it was buried by the rocks and had all the music pages tells me it was done deliberately, not just lost. And again, we will discuss the music pages once we find the music room. And again, I passed this room up without doing anything because I didn't want to walk in here yet. The Root Cellar, an underground store of jarred vegetables and fruits from Mount Holly's gardens. It's always amazing what great things come from a little digging around in the dirt. Now, the Root Cellar, of course, is where the stores of sugar beets and potatoes and other things that were used by Denny Ravane in the moonshine operation, as he was using the leftover food from here to power the moonshine, if you will, in the still. There's a note here. It's a clip from one of the other articles. The search continues. Author and illustrator of whose fanciful stories, Marion Marigold. Last seen, no sign has been found yet. In your mom's handwriting. So she left this here clearly after her disappearance. And I do have the magnifying glass. Excellent. So here we have the family tree. There's Tomas, and somewhere above him, presumably, would be Edwin. Orve, always with her moon pendant on. Lord William Epson. Lady Ashlyn, who we know next to nothing about. Their child, of course, supposedly. Clara Epson. Her brother Lionel, who we talked about earlier. And we've talked about the heart in the tree here, potentially matching the heart in the tree that once stood by the orchard. There's our grandfather Simon H. Sinclair. H could stand for Herbert. And good old Herbie, Grunkle Herbie, Herbert S. Sinclair, possibly Herbert Simon Sinclair. Then Mary, Swan Pendant, firmly in place. And the Mount Holly family tree. Now, not everyone sees that down on the root down here, we have Simon P. Jones written in. And I want to say that's our handwriting, I could be wrong about that. It's in all caps and sort of childish in that sense, but I'm pretty sure that matches our handwriting from the book checkout. And then in Herbert's handwriting, it says the besoiled child, probably child. That's the assumption, because it's down here on the root next to Simon. What that means is still quite open to interpretation. Explanation that I've seen that seems plausible, at least, is that since Mary married Daniel, who is a commoner, that their child is considered, besoiled and is, of the earth and is not necessarily of sufficient lineage for some people's perspective and what have you, which sounds good in theory on one side, but this is Herbert who wrote this. Herbert loved Mary, and he certainly seems to have had a really good relationship with Simon in Simon's youth, and loved having him around the house, and made him his heir. It doesn't seem there's any attempt to write Simon out because he's besoiled. So I don't know that I buy that theory, that it's some sort of marking him as common and unworthy in any way. It's not my theory, so I don't have the details on what else might feed into that, but it's worth mentioning at least. But I not that I buy it. The crests here, of course, we see them elsewhere, but the Sinclair crest is the Hollies, of course, and they are the Baron of Mount Holly, the lands here. And the 3 bars there look an awful lot like the bars on the shield of Orindia in the statue of Colossus Orindia. On one of the slides there, you see Colossus Orindia, and she has the shield, and it's got 3 lines, or at least it looks like it. So the theory is that there is some relationship between the Sinclairs directly and one of the old houses of Orindia, possibly even House Oris itself. Possible. We don't know. Epson, of course, is the swan, and the combination of these 2 things makes up the crest that you see in the wine cellar and in the master bedroom, which is Mary's crest. Mary is the combination of Sinclair and Epson. Simon's is obviously different, and you see it in room 46, but that's Mary's crest, which I find interesting that that's the crest that is central to, the core, the family core, etc. A lot still goes through Mary, no matter what theories you subscribe to and where you think the story goes. A lot of it all runs right through Mary. So root cellar, obviously, as I was alluding to earlier, quite useful when you can get the digging up trash experiment going. It's one of the better ones for trying to clear crates out of the tunnel, and I'm slightly miffed that I didn't get that experiment today. Actually, a coin purse we haven't talked about. Not really a whole lot to say about it, but it's a small coin purse. Each time you collect 3 coins, earn 1 additional coin in interest. We had Lucky Rabbit's Foot. We could combine it here in the workshop. And I also realized I did not talk enough about the workshop when we were here before, so I left myself a note. I don't think we mentioned the fact that this box diagram was here, and that the note here, the true box does not always contain the prize. The handwriting, I don't remember off the top of my head whose this is, so I'm not going to say it. I'll put it in a note up top if I figure it out. But the fact that the design of this is here, not sure what that means as far as the timeline of parlor boxes that we've talked about. Because there's no way to know how long this has been sitting here on the wall, how old this workshop is, whether this dates back. Obviously this has been in use for some time because it was used by Grungle Herbert to make things. So it's been around for quite a while. But we don't know for sure when this happened, when the parlor boxes became a thing. Because we have the boxes... The boxes, that design sure seems to date back to like what we saw in the history classroom that the mystics were holding at the bottom of the ore sphere map. Those look a lot like those. So Herbert could have been recreating those parlor boxes all along, but the logic of the parlor game was only added after the fact. That's a possibility. And here's just him with the designs. It doesn't explain this message here, but I don't know. If I have any other thoughts about that, I'll put them in the margins at the top when I edit this. Ballroom, not bad there. And the fact that I can re-up gems makes it worthwhile. All right, we have Ballroom. Let's talk about it. Okay. The Ballroom, an opulent hall with a polished mirror floor. In the old days, numerous balls and dances were held in this splendid room. However, as he aged, the Baron began to prefer private parties in the parlor over the grand formal receptions of his youth. Whenever you enter, you set your gems to 2. So this is a really great way to accidentally lose all sorts of gems, if the game forces you into it especially. The blue tent memo is the majority of gems found in the house are artificially produced, which matches with the story that we get from Denny Ravain in his logbook. The cool thing about this place is, and they did the same thing in the entrance hall. This is not a reflection because reflections are expensive to do in computer graphics. That is an inverted version of this room built underneath the floor with a sort of a glossy, transparent floor for us to walk around on. But this is, everything here is built upside down below us, with the exception of the picture here of Clara and Simon at what is called the In Eclipse Ball, dating back to 1952. So this is a year after they were married. And as they say, they used to host balls here. Simon and Clara lived here at the manor with Herbert. I don't know where they slept. She had her ladyship's chamber, so maybe he slept there as well for the years when they were together here. But as far as we know, the two brothers and Clara all lived here together for several years while Simon was alive. And then at the very least, after Simon passed away, Clara definitely stayed in her ladyship's chamber as her actual bedroom. It's entirely possible that Simon was there as well and slept in that chamber with her the whole time. We don't know when that room was created. It's very specific to her and her childhood memories of Araja, but we don't know enough about Simon to know if he would be like, yeah, okay, that's cool, I like it, I like purple, or and the decor, not just the floor plan color, or if there might have been another room that has since been gotten rid of. No idea. But everything else in here, all the benches, the chairs, the music stand, the piano, everything else has its reflection built underneath it. Presumably, the only reason this does not is because you could pick it up and interact with it. I don't know if the Lost and Found can steal that or not. I don't think it can. But if it could, that'd be another explanation for why there's no reflection, is just it needs to be able to be removable. I think it's most likely just because it is an interactable thing, because as we talked about in the entrance hall, the vases that you can smash are not reflected in the entrance hall on the floor because they're an interactable thing. So it would make sense that things that can change and move and be picked up would not be part of the reflection, just in case. And of course, here's 2 out of the 8 music sheets. And as I said, we'll talk about the music sheets when we actually get to the music room. I don't mind having a planetarium here. Since that's a dead end and that's a dead end, might as well use an actual dead end. I got a lever. We need a key. That's a pebble. Lots of coins. Kind of need a key, though. All right. Secret garden. We're finally here. Okay. I have a note here that I may not have read the description of the cloister, so we're going to hit on that one in a minute. But for now, the secret garden. A floor plan so secretive it had been removed from the drafting pool to avoid anyone unwanted accidentally stumbling upon it. This secluded garden, flanked by a variety of Moragi fruit trees, has served as a private retreat to at least 2 other generations of Sinclairs. So presumably the secret garden then has been around since Tomas's days. And the key here, literally the key, has tripped up. I don't know how many streamers that I've seen play this. It tripped me up initially because I was looking for a place I was looking for the secret garden to use the key in to unlock some secret within the secret garden. And obviously the first place it showed up as use this to unlock rooms. That doesn't fit. So it took me a while before I was like, all right, well, let me pull it out of the coat check where I had it hidden and tried it somewhere other than trying to hold on to it for when I found the secret garden. It's used to open the secret garden. And because it trips up so many people, the secret garden key is actually forbidden from being used in my spoiler-free bingo mode that I play, that I'll be playing again after I'm done with this completion series. It's anything that involves the safes, codes, combinations, anything like that is I can't use, and using the secret garden key is one of those things that I'm not allowed to use because could be a spoiler for people who haven't figured it out yet. So, spreading fruit. This is another great way of removing crates. If you get an eat an apple, remove a crate experiment, for instance. If you spread to the conference room, I think the fruit is basically always the same. Maybe there's like a 1 apple or orange difference at most, but it's pretty much apples, oranges on the side table, and it's a set amount. If you spread to the whole house without a conference room, then you can get bananas spread all over the place, and I think it's a better deal, but you have to go hunt the stuff down. Conference room concentrates it, but you get less fruit overall. Of course, if you have a small manor, you get the same amount of fruit in your conference room, even if you have a small manor, as opposed to you might only get a couple of pieces of fruit. So it's a balancing act of when and how you use it and what you get out of it. The cool things here, obviously when you turn these, the goal is to align all the weather vane arrows originally pointing towards the west here. Even though, as you may notice, that's east. But since this can be drafted on either side of the house, it really doesn't matter. So there's one lever revealed. When you bash this down, you see the little alcove here with the 3rd wheel in it to turn the top vane. The 4 sides of this, originally you see the in eclipse moon. On the other side of the wheel, because there actually is a full wheel back there behind the wall, on the other side of the wheel is the Orinda Aries sigil. Behind that sigil, right behind the sigil, is the Iseclipse moon. So the other moon is actually over there and is part of the mechanism. It's just covered up by the Orinda Aries sigil. That was one of the surprises that I found when I used the free roaming mod. And there's a video for that on my channel where if you want to see it. And then, of course, the other two sides here have the levers. Now, the cool thing about the secret garden placement is if you place the secret garden along the west wing of the house and you draft the garage north of the secret garden and go outside through the garage door, you can see this little alcove jutting out from the wall. So if you haven't figured out this whole thing out yet, that might be a clue to say, wait a second, what's there? Wait a second, and that might give you a clue to bash the wall down, that there is something significant back there. The other cool thing, though, is that with this lever pointed here with the west open, if you go outside the secret garden and around the back side here, the east lever is accessible from the outside of the house. And so you can pull both levers even if you have not bashed down that wall and have access to fully turn the weather vane around. And I actually used that, I think, in dare mode or day one of the two. One of those challenge modes. And again, the video's on my channel. But I actually used that to open up both sides of the antechamber so that I could get into 46 and win that challenge mode. I don't remember which one it was, but I definitely put that to good use. Okay, not locked. We're going okay here. Of course, we have the west side open, and we're on the other side of the house, so our chances of actually getting in there today quite slim. But if I can find my coat check, that's another story. Okay, it's a significant investment of gems, but we can now remember to read this. Hello. Okay, lots of steps work going on here. Another rock. And a can. Fantastic. Okay, yeah, we did not read the room description here. A covered walk and colonnades surrounding an enclosed and seemingly inaccessible garden. A solitary angelic statue in the center of the grassy patch provides the secluded court a hallowed atmosphere. We will discuss all the upgrades when we get the upgrade disc for this place. So this is free to draft from. Pool turns the right way. For only a gem, that's not bad. And what do you got for me? Okay, I mean... see if this gets me to a T intersection next. Like the boiler room. That'd be nice.
Making sure. Alright, if we make it, I need to come back here and adjust that.
Okay. Turn north. That'll work. Alright, 2 dice to get into the antechamber here. That is the wrong direction. I'll take it. Okay. Alright, looks like we're gonna roll credits today. Alright, so we got a few spaces left here to draft from. Might as well use them while we can. Laundry! Cool. We've not done laundry room yet. We've already done aquarium, so we've talked about this key being here. A laundry room, a standard hub of domestic toil, complete with washers, dryers, and a state-of-the-art steam-powered unit, leveraging the newly installed steam ducts leading from the boiler room. Despite its innocent appearance, this inconspicuous space is rumored to launder more than just linen. Yeah, we drafted it before, but didn't actually talk about it, so now we have. The options here can be kind of cool. The spin cycle, service costs 5 gold, exchanges all gems and coins. Keys and gems, excuse me, and keys and coins for the third one. I've seen people abuse that keys and coins with Blessing of the High Roller to get so many, or maybe is that one? Or maybe, I don't know, but this one, when it's powered, also has some cool stuff, and which I may never actually use, so we're talking about it now while we're here. The powered effects are the Shoe Shine, which exchanges all of your steps with all of your gems at a 1-to-1 rate. So I would have 54 gems, but only 3 steps to use them in. Star Treatment, exchange all of your allowance tokens with all of your stars, 1-to-1 rate. So that one can be crazy useful when you're trying to get more stars or change your allowance around. That one can be put to pretty good use late game. And then the die cleaning is exchange all of your ivory dice with all of your keys. That can be ridiculously useful if you set it up right. So you can swap money with keys with dice, and now you have dice for days for drafting whatever the hell you want. So the key that we picked up, since I didn't read the description out, excuse me, a long-buried file cabinet key, likely open a drawer somewhere here on the estate. Unlikely we'll draft the archives, but it could happen still. Sure. Just sort of drafting what we can here at the end. Oh my, I wish. Just a couple of more gems. Hey! Didn't even have to try. Okay. Our other file cabinet drawer here brings up this scrapbook. Get out of the way, magnifying glass. So, March 10th, 1886. This is, of course, the end of the 22-year war in the Fifth Era. The Fifth Era encompasses almost the entire, or the war encompasses almost all of the Fifth Era. There is some unknown time period between the death of Desolé III, the very next day, Learson announcing his claim to the throne, and then sometime after that, the Fensurrection. Sometime after that, General Keyes signs up with Learson, and presumably at that point, when Learson and Keyes have Teskin, wrong general. When General Teskin joins up with Learson, and at some point then, when Teskin's forces join Learson, presumably that kicks off the actual war, because before that, Learson just has his supporters in the streets of Fen. When Teskin signs up, however, now you got an army, so now there's a war. So there's some unknown time period between Desolé III's death and the actual start of the war, which probably coincides around with Teskin actually signing up with Learson. And whatever time period that is, probably a few months, because you gotta recognize there's a problem. Decide you're gonna be a jerk and send troops over to put down the insurrection. Troops gotta get there. They had trains, so probably maybe not have taken that long, but you still have to call the troops back in, send them new orders, they go over, put down the Fensurrection, cause a ruckus, kill all the people. Now there's a period of outrage, people have to make decisions, how are we going to deal with this, blah, 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 blah. So, there's probably a few months there, I would say less than a year, or at most around about a year, give or take. So that's an estimate based purely on intuition. We don't know exactly. But we do know that the war did not take the entire era, because the history exam question is how long did the war last? The entirety of the Fifth Era and 22 years are two separate answers, one of which is wrong. So we know that it didn't take the entire era technically. Anyway, March 10th, 1886, Reddington Herald. Peace! Terms of surrender have been accepted. The red flags flying over the capital was a bittersweet sight of comfort for many of this realm's war-weary citizens. After 22 years, peace had come at last. We, the staff of the Reddington Herald, join all the citizens of Reddington in welcoming this new era of peace, and formally retract and disavow all prior printed support of House Desolé. Royals flee in defeat. For shame, oh, you cowardly coattails! In our most trying hour we clung, and in yours you ran! In his first public address since the end of the war, the victorious leader of the Fen army, General Antechamber, did not express much sympathy for his fallen enemy. The royal family's departure was not unexpected, as rumors of their plans to flee to the neighboring realm of Araja had been circulating even before the war's end. However, the suddenness of their departure has left many of their supporters feeling abandoned. It's a disgrace, a betrayal of the people they swore to protect. They have fled to foreign lands seeking comfort and refuge while their people suffer and struggle to rebuild. This is not the kind of leadership we need. We need leaders who will stand with us in times of adversity, who will not abandon us when we are afraid and at our most vulnerable. So, note, he is still at this point the victorious leader of the Fen army, General Teskin. He is not yet King Teskin. December 9th, 1924, and the spawn of many a conspiracy theory. So, 1924 is 1 year after Simon Sinclair was born. He was born in 1923. We don't have any more exact date than just the year. So, this child being born is a contemporary of Simon, and presumably of Clara. We don't know Clara's birth date. But we can assume it's around the same time, since she was at the school, married Simon, and I don't expect there was a huge age discrepancy between them, and she lived to an old enough age that, the timelines match. There's no weirdness going on there. Desolé, princess born in exile. In the 4 decades since the end of the war, little news has reached our news desk regarding the former royals, whose life in exile has remained a quiet source of speculation and mystery. Prince Rolf, the grandson of Desolé IV, broke that silence on Tuesday when he announced the birth of his daughter, the Princess Caitlin Jari, who, in keeping with Arajan tradition, was endowed with her mother's surnames. Close supporters of the exiled family are of course concerned, as this public announcement displays a notable shift in conduct for the royals and sets the stage for the family to exit private life and return once again to the public sphere, a change that would undoubtedly stir up long-buried allegiances and unrest in our realm. I don't personally buy the theory that Caitlin is Clara. I'll just say that up front. I've never really bought into that theory. I also don't think that the JRE family is currently in control of Araja. JRE Yenna being queen of, JRE family line, etc. from the bust, I don't think the JRE line is currently in ruling Araja. They're still probably a noble family, but not the royal family, if such a family still exists. There's some interpretations of what we see on the postcard and such that they could be more like a parliamentary system now. We don't know. But I don't think that the Jari family is still ruling Araja at this point. And the reason is because if Prince Rolf married an active member of the ruling family of Araja, that's not quiet life. That's not staying silent. That's not staying out of the public sphere, etc. That's marrying the freaking royal line of another country. And that's not what this article tells us. This article says the Desolé family has been keeping a low profile in Araja, heads down, not doing a whole lot, but he's still a prince of the Desolé line with a claim to the throne of former Orinda Ares. and so probably hobnobs with other royal or other noble class of people in Araja. So the JRE line is probably still quite an influential house, but I don't think they're the royal house, because there's a big difference between marrying someone of your class and station, which is sort of expected, even if you're in an exiled family, and marrying the ruling family and their bloodline. And so I think that's a huge difference between there, and so that's why I don't think that the Jerrys are currently in charge. I also don't think, the reason I don't think that Clara is Caitlin is because this child is now known. Caitlin JRE exists in this world. She is now of public interest. She's not just going to disappear and get renamed and shipped north somehow. That's a big thing that would happen, that might happen. Someone's going to notice when the child of the Desolé line and the JRE line, whatever their status, is no longer around anymore after a nice public announcement like this. So I don't buy the theory that Caitlin was renamed Clara and adopted by the Epsons. I do buy the theory that Caitlin, or possibly, nothing certain, but I do find far more credence to the theory. How about that Caitlin had a daughter, and knowing the circumstances of her birth and the controversy around it, kept it quiet, and that daughter was adopted by Clara and Simon as Mary. And that's why Mary's birth certificate that we see here in the archives, right below this in fact, is fake. Is because they needed to drum up the name, they needed to fake her, that she was actually their child. I also think that it's a theory that I came up with after the fact, and I address it in the videos while editing, but I didn't talk about it because I didn't have this theory yet. In the nursery, we'll come back to this in just a second here. Twin cribs found in this room might suggest that at one point in time there had been some hopeful expectation of a sudden growth in the family tree. Where was that growth going to come from? Because you vividly remember this from your visit here in your youth, and you were already too old for the activities here. So they didn't have this nursery with twin beds in it for you. Back it up a generation. Simon and Clara? So Simon and Clara with birthing Mary. We'll come back to that. It sure as hell isn't Herbert, who doesn't have any life partner, gay, straight, or otherwise. So he's not having kids and expanding this family tree. His extended family of cousins, and the family that we know of through, whatever their names are, the ones that get the clocks, they don't live here. There's no reason for an expansion of the family tree from this. And Arave and Tomas certainly weren't having any of their kids. Simon and Herbert are 3 years apart. They're not going to be occupying cribs at the same time. Back it up and go back to Clara and Simon. This is pulled out of whole cloth. I'm making this up as I go, but it does make a certain amount of sense, as a lot of the theories we've talked about tonight go. If they were expecting twins perhaps even, and then lost those kids, because this is expectations of a sudden growth that didn't happen. You don't decorate a room with twin cribs unless you're planning on those cribs being occupied. You may put one out, that's fine. If you're like, okay, well, just think Simon and Clara are starting to try now, so let's get a nursery ready so that when they do get it, Herbert, already has the room ready for him as a gift. Say, hey, I updated the room for you, the nursery. I got it ready for you for your expecting kid whenever you guys are ready. No. He made it with 2 cribs. The only realistic explanation there is that they were expecting 2 kids. That didn't happen, which means they may have lost those kids. Now enter Caitlin JRE saying, I've had this kid, I don't want my daughter to go through the same crap that I did as a kid. and all the political intrigue and all the rest of the things that come with this, can y'all please adopt my daughter in secret? Mary moves up, or her daughter becomes a peer, becomes Mary, and is secretly adopted into the family. Fake birth certificate. We know that Clara grew up, has spent a lot of her childhood in Araja, so may have known Caitlin as another member of a wealthy family. Epson, running in the same circles as the JRE and and the Desolate, Rolf. So could have been friends. So this is someone she probably knew socially who is the same age as her. Might have been, and so they may have had a friendship there. Would have been someone that Caitlin may have trusted to take on her daughter. And then that explains Clara's letter to Mary saying, you are not a Sinclair, you are not an Epson, you are JRE. Because you aren't actually our child. You are this other person's child. And we'll revisit that a little bit when we get down into that part of the tomb and read the actual letter. But just this is a theory that I came up with literally while editing, and something came across, and I forget what prompted it, but that's where that came from. So anyway, back to our thing here. January 11th, 1929, so we fast forwarded a few years, and now tensions rise on the southern border. The Crown's recent decision to dismantle the realm's remaining railways has caused increasing tensions with our southern neighbor Araja, who has for many generations relied on our realm's rail tracks for the northern passage to Arch Ares. The ensuing round of trade negotiations with Araja, which were conducted with reckless care and little diplomacy, have, to the surprise of no one, ended at an impasse. Early reports have alluded that in addition to their other demands, the Crown has requested the asylum granted the former House of Desolate be revoked. That's the tension and the problems that, because Rolf and his wife announced Caitlin's birth, it's re-upping all these problems. And so again, Caitlin may have said, this crap isn't worth it, I don't want more problems. So her daughter sent north. There's part of Araja's sigil, of course, and that's it. Porterhouse steak, a delightfully expensive steak cut, bone-in and extra marbled for maximum tenderness. A perfect dish for those who love extravagance. Porterhouse steak is really damn good. Sirloin's my favorite steak. That is my go-to steak, however. I love a good sirloin. Alright, I did not read the description, even though it was already checked off, so that's why I wanted to make sure I came back and did that. Okay, on with the quest.
I could drain the fountain. I probably should. Crap. Yeah, I need to go drain the fountain because I need to open that door as well as part of my completion, so just do that now while I've got it, and then I never have to worry about it again. And I can start adjusting pump room after that. Okay. Plans within plans. Alright, here we go. I've only made one wish, apparently. Basement key. Done! And there's nothing else I can do on this side since I don't have the ability to make fire. I love this track.
Alright, here we go. Alright, we get our Mayait. That one's done. Get another foreman's letter. March 1st, 1917. Alright. So this is after they've done the reservoir, after the Royal Station's been located, etc. But this is 2 years into the mining and the excavation process, and about a year before they finish.
After 10 days of pumping water up from the underground spring, the reservoir's finally been filled. It's a shame the old station had to be flooded as a consequence of this action, but I suspect that may have been the actual reason they chose to build the reservoir here, and as an engineer, I agree that flooding is preferable to collapsing the entire tunnel. On the bright side, now that our water supply is no longer limited, we can start to leverage steam to a much greater extent. I suspect by this time next month, the steam-powered hoist at the main site will be able to run 24 hours a day.
So, again, this is the reservoir being finished off that will ultimately be providing the water up to the boiler room to improve the performance and make it available with all the steam-powered lifts. Oh, we're roaring down those stairs. Love the running shoes down here. Simon actually manages to haul butt. Alright, here we go. Everybody's favorite, what the hell is this combination? And why is this a thing? Mayait, or in Arajan, Mayait, for small gate. And if we count small gates, 8 dates, crack 8 safes. I had no idea that that was what was going on there when I first opened it, of course. I just looked at it and was like, May, well, the only words of there that can spell a month that works, let's try May, and it worked. Because the 8 obviously had to be important. Alright. January 13th, 1916. So this is before that last log, obviously. This is about a year and a half before that last one. And this is fairly early. They've only been excavating for about half a year, about 6 months, because it was June 1915, and now we're into January of 16.
I knew what we were looking at as soon as we uncovered the first spire, but it wasn't until the first floor plan was unearthed that most of the crew realized what ruins we were exhuming. The border was the same pitch as the sunless cavern we found it in, a dark-trimmed floor plan of ill-fated Orindia. We have found an authentic black print. The sooner we seal this site back up, the better for us all.
Now, I find that one important because right off the bat, the foreman's like, dude, this is a problem. No. Let's just seal it up, bury it, and get out of here. And then a couple years later in the logs, he's like, man, I'm really going to be sorry to see this place go and all the history. Like, he's come around on this process over the years. And you can see his perspective changed. We didn't look at in the out the window of the last room, sorry, but you see 3 water levels marked on there as you look out over the reservoir. Down 1 is like boat level, or I think, or something like that, and then or the docks, and then level 6 is entry level, and then 0 is fully drained. So it's just telling you how to access the different things that are useful with the reservoir. Now that place is interesting as hell. Obviously, the indication of this is Castle Orindia. I don't know why it's buried in a cave. I don't know why the castle and the seat of power for Arinda Ares and Arindia before that, because Reddington is where Oris set up his capital. So presumably Mount Holly originally. I don't know why it's buried underground. I know they liked soot and ash. I don't know how that translates to this. I don't know why you need spires and minarets and guard towers in a cave. Because you can't play lookout. You'll be looking at a wall. The implication could be that this used to be more open around it, and that this was accessible. And we know that a lot of this area was deliberately filled in, like the foreman mentioned in the earlier log that we read. So conceivably, this was an open area at one point. And then the front of the castle here that we're looking at, we assume it's the front, could be the back entrance, I don't know, had access outside somehow, and that those actual were useful towers, etc. And that when they buried it, they literally just filled this whole thing in with dirt and mud and crud from the mountain, which seems like a massive freaking undertaking. And the fact that this is now a structural cave of stone around it makes that theory not really make a whole lot of sense, but then a whole lot about this castle's location and construction don't make any frickin' sense. But it's what we got. Now, in my free roam mod, I actually fly over there and take a look at it up close. And there's a couple of interesting details in there. So I check that out if you want to see what it looked like and what I did over there. The minecart way over there in the distance gives you a sense of scale, which is not wrong. That is a tiny frickin' castle. Like, you can't climb the stairs up that thing. Those minarets, those castle towers, are not much bigger than the minecart width. And you can see it for scale. The minecart's right frickin' there. So if your minecart is this big, the castle tower is probably like this big. I don't want to try climbing that spiral staircase. Maybe it's just a long ladder going up? That would seem stupid. Not a very well designed castle, and it's frickin' tiny. I don't know. Like, if that minecart wasn't there for scale, then it might change your perception of it, but it's tiny. It really is. Alright, and now we get to red letter number 1. Chronologically, the first one, we know the day it was received, but not the year. This obviously comes after Herbert has inherited the title of Baron from his father, and sometime well before the letters were stolen. That's all we know, realistically. But this is May the 8th. Dear Baron Sinclair, to begin, my name is Worth Lord. My father used to work for your father, the Right Honourable Baron Thomas Sinclair, between the years of 1915 and 1918. The former having died last month at the advanced old age of 89, may he sleep in soot and ash. He left behind his widow, 7 children, and 30-odd grandchildren. I write to you today, however, not to inform you of these family affairs of little consequence, but to tell you a little bit about my father. He lived his life towering above us in solemn silence, like many members of his and your father's generation. He never spoke of the work he did in the mountains of Reddington, or the famous estate in which he was stationed. He never spoke of the Baron, not once. I tell you this only to relate that he never betrayed the confidence your father placed in him. The secrets he kept for your family, he took with him underground. His elderly comrades and colleagues from his old mining outfit proved, however, to be not nearly as discreet and considerate with their words. During the wake, fueled by seemingly endless supply of spirits, these venerable gentlemen embarked on a journey down memory lane, recounting as much of the good old days as they could dredge up. While such reminiscence might typically be dismissed as the fanciful ramblings of age, the volume and specificity of their accounts lend a certain credence to their words. Now me, I am not a presumptive man. I don't presume these stories to be true.
I don't presume your house is host to secrets of this magnitude, and yet I find myself irresistibly drawn to the idea of sharing these tales, true or not. They seem, after all, stories worthy of being heard. I wonder if my current abundance of idle time fuels this urge. Perhaps I have too much time on my hands. Perhaps if one were to engage me in some worthwhile and profitable enterprise, my eagerness to pass the time by telling stories would be curbed. I eagerly await your response from your lordship, Mr. Worthlaw. We're not blind to the irony of blackmailing you for a blackmail letter, and we're not proud to join the endless procession of those who have knocked on your mailbox looking for a handout, particularly so when our methods lack the refined sophistication and class that this author so effortlessly wields. That, of course, is Denny's handwriting, and he's referring to the we. As we know, Denny has issues concealing his true numbers. He's not, crafty like the Tuscan Raiders. He stole only his contract from the from room 46, and here now he's talking about we, and if the number 3 or the letter, if not number 3 letter, but if the letter from the office, I said 3 because it's the March one. If that was indeed from him, it's he's talking about we feel this way, we don't feel ourselves superior to you, etc. So he's still referring to himself in the plural, probably to disguise that it's just him. There's no evidence that he included anybody else in his blackmail. I've seen theories that Worthlaw then came and joined the manor as one of the employees. I don't buy it. I don't think this handwriting matches anybody we know of, and I don't think Herbert would trust anyone around the house. But he's talking about, engage me in a profitable enterprise, so hire me. No, Herbert would never trust this person to hire them. Probably just paid him off, like you do. But there's not a whole lot else you can really say about that, unfortunately. If anybody has any other theories about the letters, feel free to drop them in the comments on YouTube, or bring them up in a future live stream here on Twitch. I'm always happy to entertain questions and thoughts. Hang on, does that work here? Nope. Okay, on the Steam account, if you push the space bar while you're going downstairs, Simon actually jumps and takes a little sort of a hovering leap down, because the jump does exist. It's just his jump height is set to 0. So if you're jumping off stairs, you can get a little bit of a boost, which is actually one of the ways how people use the out of bounds glitching for glitch speedruns. Is, if I remember correctly, that involves using his jump at a key moment in a certain place going downstairs, and you can use that to clip out of bounds and do stuff. I don't know if it works on PlayStation or not, but... Okay, so we've opened basement key doors. We're about to go up to 46. Is there anything else we need to worry about before we do? Obviously, I could go make... Well, no, I can't make anything in the workshop. I think we're it. I think that's it. I think we go hit up 46 and roll credits and call it a night.
Freaking love this music. Okay, yeah, open the boiler room. Let's reset this, because there's not a reason not to at this point. Alright, passageway, dark room, and cut the music.
And I'm going to let the whole thing play because this is freaking gorgeous. I've seen people literally start crying at this point, and I don't blame them at all.
Who sat on a red throne, He had a red crown made of rubies. And a red castle.
I've seen this dozens of times now, and I still occasionally get a little choked up when you see the birds flying.
The prince had a love for all things red. It's the only true color, the prince often said. He could not stand the sight of a canary or a crow. He could not stand the white of a swan in the snow. And he never looked up.
This is where it diverges from the published version.
For fear of the view.
Or the next one, I guess.
He had
No, I
heard
guess
that
it's...
the sky was not a red hue.
That's it.
He didn't see the birds, or the changing of the leaves, and he never saw the sights of life's many symphonies. He couldn't see beyond the red shade he was aware. He never caught a glimpse of the world I had to share. But one day the prince saw something new. And if you look closely, you might see it too. The skies parted and the clouds withdrew. The prince had a new favorite color. The color blue.
Thank you, Sushi. Appreciate the claps. Wanda. So yeah, so the ending, obviously, that is the version we see in the manuscript version of the Red Prince that we read back on the first episode of this series. Obviously, with the rolling credits here, this is rightfully called by a lot of people the finishing the tutorial. I'm one of those people that says it all the time, because it really is. I mean, it is an ending to the game. It is, you accomplish your original goal. You know, so I mean, there's it is an ending. So you roll credits, and you are just barely scratching the surface of what the game has to offer for you. For the people who get this put to this place and stop, I feel a little sorry, because if they enjoyed the game enough to get this far, I'm sad that they didn't take the next step, and hopefully, because I think they probably would have enjoyed it and kept going. But if they legitimately said, nope, this is my off ramp, okay. But this theme song, God, is still gorgeous. I feel like it was just shy of getting goosebumps a couple of times in there. And again, I've seen this dozens of times and heard the music more than that even, and still. Christopher Manson, who opened many doors for me. A reference to Maze, if I remember correctly. Mount Holly, our new home. 36, excavated dig spots. 4 shops. 4 new rooms. Solid. Alright, and that is going to be where we call it a night. And tomorrow, or not tomorrow, next week, we will pick back up and go explore the next day. And some new possibilities open up to us. We'll get some more completion things done. We'll make sure, let's see, we were at like 11-ish%, I think, when we started, so we're up to 18 now. Double check all the rooms and our percentages here. Rotunda, Gallery, and 8 we haven't done. Attic, we saw it but didn't draft it today. Music room, looking forward to that one. I can't believe we hadn't done the wine cellar yet. I used to draft that all the friggin' time. Trophy room, obviously, will start becoming available now to us. Vault, we'll have to worry about that one now. Chamber of Mirrors. Mail room, we still haven't done. Freezer, we have not used. Conference room, antechamber, and we've done 46 now. And the antechamber. So I did not read the descriptions on either of those, unfortunately. I will make a note. Actually, you know what? Let's just do it. Let's just talk about them now, rather than forget it. The room directory page for the antechamber. From its root meaning the room before, all signs and paths point toward the antechamber. This mysterious sealed room, resting on the 9th rank, may prove, however, quite an initial challenge to even reach, let alone enter. Still, you can't help but draw a connection between this chamber and room 46. Now, the original antechamber for the house, for a number of years, was the vestibule, but the screwy locking mechanism of the vestibule had them swap it out. It's unclear whether the antechamber, when they swapped it and built this antechamber, whether it had locked doors originally, because the levers were a later addition. They may have come with the antechamber, or it may have had regular doors for a while. We don't really know, to be honest. The only doors we know about specifically are the security doors that were put in after. The security doors have only been in for like a year and a half, so I think it was after the blackmail. I'll put up confirmation of that, but I'm pretty sure that those are accurate. Yeah, so for a while there, after they swapped out the vestibule because they got sick of the locked doors, the antechamber may have just had regular doors for a while. And then the description for 46. The mysterious room mentioned in H.S. Sinclair's will, named only by a number. Despite the house's official blueprint only showing a total of 45 rooms, not counting the outer room, the words of the legal document make it apparent that a 46th room in the house in fact exists. Finding this room is your primary objective while on the estate. It is, after all, your bequest. And we'll talk more about 46 directly next time we actually go inside and look around. There's not much else to talk about with it now. The one thing worth mentioning is for the antechamber specifically, if you monk the antechamber outside, that is key to a massive clue for a much later game thing. And we'll get to that when we actually do it, because I will probably demonstrate it as part of this series, and we'll talk more about it at that time. Still a couple more outer rooms to worry about. We did the root cellar, so actually just the shrine now is left. On floor plans, we've drafted the planetarium and talked about it. We just picked up the treasure trove. Picked up closed exhibit. All right, we still only have seen the drafting studio once, maybe twice, but only drafted it once. And okay, we will pick up some trophies next time. We saw the sale. That's checked off there, so we did Sightseer's had to get it. Reddington. Okay, red letter, and we had the shelter, and I forgot to go back and read the letter, so that one's still not done, I don't think. We're filling stuff in here. We did get the stopwatch. I didn't stop to read it because you're on a timer. So apologies for that, but you only have a minute to move, and we were in a hurry. But while you're doing it, you don't lose steps, keys, or gems, but you do have to have the keys and the gems in the first place. Learn that one the hard way. If you have 0 keys, it won't let you just magically unlock a door. You have to have the key first, it just doesn't spend the key when you use it. And then same with gems. You can't spend gems on a room that costs 3 gems if you only have 2 or 0. First time I found the stopwatch, I found it in the clock tower. My first time drafting the clock tower in the far southeast corner of the manor, and the last door that I had available to open was in the northwest corner of the manor. Almost, it was almost in the corner, and I didn't have any keys. So I read the description of the stopwatch. I was like, oh, and ran across the entire house and touched the door handle with a fraction of a second left. And obviously it didn't work because I didn't have any keys. And so I assumed that that's what had gone wrong, was that I had missed it. No, I didn't miss it. I just didn't have any keys still. So I raced across the entire freaking house for no reason. As I say, learned that lesson the hard way. Coming up to be able to use the axe. That's nice to get that out of the way. And we are all caught up. So we're at 20% of the way done. And a lot of these things are going to start filling in the completion percentage faster as we go. Obviously today we drafted more rooms and had fewer rooms to talk about, so we got through more movement and action in the game and accomplishing feats rather than just reading room descriptions the whole time. So progress is going to speed up a little bit as we go, and hopefully come back for the rest of that. If this is YouTube, thank you very much for being here. Please be sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. Consider it if you are not already. Obviously, I've got a lot of Blueprints content that may be of interest to you, but I also play a lot of other games and post them out there. So take a look, and hope to see you in the comments, and come catch a live session sometime if you haven't already. Thanks a lot, YouTube, and have a good day.